people might like.
So it's been a few.
we should call the workshop to order. Now, I know I have 4 apologies. Hans, is that, what would the apology?
First of all, they will be late. Brent Mackey's not here. He's coming in from Hamilton in the afternoon. And Dean.
And who was the last one? Oh, Simon's zooming in. Is Simon zooming?
The backbone's here, though.
So your worship, just from an administrative perspective, so you're aware, because
Excuse Hans?
Yes.
Bruce O'Wheeler.
He will be late. But he is
The email will be late.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah.
well, it just goes to what you're doing. Sorry, is that Natasha was taking this, but again has had some problems with sickness with infants and is unavailable. And so we're running this, and what I've got is we're live streaming for the minutes, so we can get the minutes anyway from that. Cara will take the administrative side of the meeting. So in terms of just the apologies and that, as long as Cara's got the time and had picked up that loose description, if we could just get it formalised, then she can record it.
Yes, so I've got a lateness apology from Councillor O'Wheeler, as Zoom this afternoon, but I don't think this morning from Councillor McAtamany and Councillor Mackie and McCrusty are both apologies for the whole day. If I can
King Payne.
gone for the whole day.
Yeah.
It's in Fiji.
It's in Fiji.
Oh, he's gone.
He won't be running us.
Right, so that's Councillor Payne as well. So on with those apologies. Councillor Graham seconded it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? We're into it.
Thanks, your worship. So if we just start the presentation, which you've all got copies of, and I also refer to the workshop papers that we should all have. So the presentation is based on the workshop papers.
I just have to go and get my pad from my seat, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the workshop's split into 2 parts. We couldn't get election services down at the start, but they will be here to take us through the actual option assessment deliberations. So that'll happen just after morning tea. We'll have an early-ish morning tea so we can get started on that side of things. The first part of the workshop will then be just talking about the results of the feedback process that we've had and go from there. It's possible that we might finish earlier, but we won't be able to actually proceed with this next section until they turn up and worship.
What time you want to smoke?
10ish, because we're working on 10:30 being when election services turns up. And so again, if we've got any questions related to them, we can store it for them, but otherwise we can use the time profitably, but without wasting time, you can adjourn till that happens anyway, and you might want to do something else if that was the case. But in terms of the outcome, it's really important because of the timeframes and other bits and pieces that actually you decide through this workshop, or give us direction through this workshop around the option for the initial proposal for the representation. And then things will kick off and it gets formalised. And as you'll see, we've got a proper consultation and submission structure. So the 26th of July meeting, which is the same meeting we're adopting the long-term plan, will be the meeting that you approve the initial proposal. So you'll see it in its final version at that time. You'll do the homework now over the workshop, and it'll come back to you in its final proposal form, and then it kicks off from there. Just talked about that. If we go back to what we've already achieved, what decisions have already been made. Generally speaking, with representation reviews, you've got to deal with the electoral system you're going to be using for voting. There's always a decision around provision of Māori wards, and also you deal with the representation review itself. And just remind ourselves, we've agreed previously that it's first past the post is the way to go again. And the decision at the time was no Māori wards as well. And that's also another reason, because that decision, that's another reason why that the change in legislation around Māori wards hasn't affected us at all, because council made a decision we weren't going to have Māori wards in the first place.
That was more, excuse me, Steve, directed around, there was no real hunger for one, is there? So.
Well, through your worship, that's right. I mean, we do, prior to making that decision, there was consultation and there was discussion with Ngāi Tahu and Runaka, and also local mana whenua. And the prevailing view was there was no desire or expectation that council would go down a Māori wards pathway, and so council considered that information when it came to its decision at the time. So, the South Island is quite a bit different to the North Island in that respect. It's just Ngāi Tahu and that side, and so other than regional councils, which are slightly different anyway in terms of how they operate, I don't think there's a single territorial authority that has Māori wards. Māori ward?
They have representatives.
I think it's representation.
Yeah.
Yeah, on committees or a particular committee, but not what we're talking about, which is the setup of it.
Yeah.
He's always given us a clear directive.
That's
Whereas that meeting at that works, well, that first meeting I went to for Te Maruatua in Wellington there, that was the big focus in the North Island, was around the disestablishment of the Māori wards, and they sort of looked at me a bit when I said, well, we don't really have that issue where I come from down south, so there's not the hunger.
We've got to support the North.
Oh yeah, I certainly sympathise with them, but yeah, it was quite eye-watering hearing what's going on up there. Like, man, it's pretty big. Like, it's a bit like our community boards that we've got down here in our district. Like the old co-governance thing. It's interesting exercise. But I noticed in one of the submissions that went out regarding this, there was one person saying about having a Māori ward, and then there was that one person made the comment that the council lacked Māori representation. But Councillor Cattle thought I was going to be enough to make up for everyone. So
I think if you go back to what is democracy, it's meant to be a cross-representation of society, and we don't have that in a structured form. And even as we look around, not being honest, me, male, white, old, overrepresented, you would say. So the skewering of the system, it hasn't happened by chance, that's for sure. It's happened by structure. John?
Just a quick question. So the ability for people to speak to their submissions, because I did see in our initial feedback, one person wished to speak to their submission. That'll be held over till the next round of consultation.
Yes, it wasn't through your worship. I don't believe we ever proposed or intended that the preliminary consultation and preliminary feedback was to be, a hearing process. I'm pretty sure we communicated it along those lines as well in terms of that.
That's good.
It was always, as opposed to what we've just done, this was always just a preliminary, got to do that job because you are required to get that information. But no, it wasn't intended to have hearings associated with it. I did see that too.
So has there been a response sent to that person?
I'm not sure if responded yet.
Please do.
But
Yes, please do.
yeah, but well, we would take this opportunity once you had the workshop in terms of, because that's what we're looking at into it, right? To be able to look at those responses. Thank you.
Yeah, just back to the electoral system first past the post. I was thinking the other day, if we decided to go to at large, that goes out the window?
No.
Because how do you, because you'd be voting for,
You'd be voting for
you'd be voting for 6 people or whatever the number was.
no matter
so-
where they come from.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know if you can do that first past the post, can you?
Well, we do it now because we do first past the post for 4 Balclutha ward councillors
And Bruce Ward.
and 3 Bruce Ward and 2. So first past the post, yes, it's just, if you have a low voter turnout, the numbers getting to the bottom of it get quite low in terms of that, but it is first past the post.
Yeah, I don't know if you were at large, whether that would be the best system.
Because you're voting, your numbers are in the towns.
Yeah, but then they only have one vote, so they exhaust their one vote getting their one person.
No,
in, and
no, it wouldn't be for one vote.
No, it wouldn't be.
It would be
Be
for the
weighted.
number of representatives, I would think, if it was at large.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember the voting papers, isn't it? It's for Balclutha, there might have been 8 candidates, but you get to vote for 4 positions. So you
if
vote
it's at
four
large,
times.
you'd have the same number of votes as the number of representatives that you were calling for.
Yes, if you had 10 at-large people, you would be voting for 10 people.
I could see it being, yeah.
So the representation review comes round every 3 years.
So
6 years, but you can do it every 3 years. So when it comes to the 3-year point, you can actually resolve it. But you can't not do it at the 6-year point. And for many reasons, most people try not to do it except when they have to do it, which is at the 6-year point. Does that make sense? And we talked before about this, that we need to be considering community boards. And we also talked about the Local Government Commission expecting us to do that wider consultation, which is what we did, and there was that wider consultation question. And one of the things you're going to be doing today is definitely dealing with, should there be additional community boards or board. There's certainly been some feedback around that side of things, and or whether you keep the 2 that you have got.
Steve, could I just ask, like the community boards, who actually funds that? Is it?
solely the people that are in those wards. Not one.
Community of interest.
And over and above that, they actually fund some things. I mean, there's a rate there for project funds.
That comes out of the
Community of interest.
Community of interest.
Yeah, but in terms of the pool, I'm just trying to remember, and we can maybe just get a check with Ben and the team. But my understanding is obviously you have a elected member pool that gets distributed by how many elected members you have. That's a known thing, right? So ours gets divided by 14 at the moment because the mayor's separate. If you had 5 councillors, the same amount of money would be divided by 5, and it'd be higher pay. And all that. So that's a known decision that you make. In terms of community boards, I think that's a different pool. Fairly sure it's a different pool that they have. And so if you created a 3rd community board, it wouldn't come out of, let's say, the 2 community boards pools. They're all, I believe, they're separate. We can get it confirmed.
West Otago pays for West Otago, Lawrence pays for Lawrence, and there's someone else.
They also pay the share of overhead, so the cost of staffing. You see on their, if you look at their minutes, you'll see that in their breakdown financials. You can see it all there.
Yeah. But the one that does vary in terms of the salaries and all that by numbers will be the main elected members, the councillors. Nothing else? Okay. Did you just talk about that, Michelle, about the 6 years? And the reason, that's just, we should be aware of that now. Just in terms of the process, so we keep an eye on what's going on. At 26th of July, that's the resolution we need. Full month submission hearing process. We haven't scheduled, but we'll need to do hearings, depending on how many we have. Obviously a workshop after that to work our way through it, and a final proposal resolution. And then the bit that's out of our hands after that is if there's any appeals or objections. Like if we don't get any appeals or objections, it goes through. If you get one appeal or objection, it gets sent on to the commission.
Have we had one before?
Yeah.
Last time was the
I
last
thought we did.
bigger
Yeah.
community board.
I'm for that as well. I'm hating one. You only need one person to do it.
We'll oppose no change.
And then if one person does it on
Costs on the
something,
seat.
it opens up the commissioners to look at everything.
Yeah, but interestingly, the commission, didn't go wider or broader in any way.
They could have.
They could have. I mean, I've seen it before, but they didn't go anywhere near, boundaries with other councils or anything like that. But worst case, I've seen it that an objection opened up a whole boundary adjustment discussion between councils that wasn't in an original proposal. So there's always a potential, but part of the reason why it doesn't go down that way is that the commission's sort of overwhelmed with work anyway, generally, and so they have to be careful what they take on, so that may go in our favour. Any questions about that? Of course, we're all building up to having to get all this done by Christmas, don't we? Because next year's an election year, and we start the process again. It comes around pretty quick, doesn't it?
First time I've heard Christmas mentioned for a while. But
Well, we're almost in the second half of the year. So when you have, the LTP and the consumption of time and resources for that every 3 years, and then you've got the election every 3 years in between times, and what we're trying to, and with the representation review that doesn't happen all the time, but this time it does. It's quite a significant program coming through.
So that I'm pretty sure, Steve, just talking about that, there was talking here about a 4-year term too, wasn't there?
Well, there'd be, not for us to be.
No, there's murmurings, isn't there?
Yes, and it may be, I'm not sure if it's a remit or it's being proposed in the past as a remit to LGNZ, such that they would advocate to the government. I know there was discussion with the new government about the term. My recollection of any feedback from that was, I don't think the government had a lot of interest in our term changing. They might have had interest in their term changing, but I didn't see that. I think our people were pushing it, were saying, hey, this is important. I don't think it rates in importance to the government at the moment. So we just finished that consultation period. We've used the same software that we used for the LTP very successfully. It saved our bacon, that did, for the LTP.
Did it manage to weed out people that were putting in multiple submissions? Or we didn't have that problem?
It didn't weed it out. Now, and Cara can assist if we need to anything, but my understanding, it wouldn't weed it out. It made it us able to identify, because we always had the problem that legally, there's no legal, ability to strike out something necessarily. You can do it for an invalid submission.
But they can submit as many times as they want.
No,
They should only be counted as
one.
one submission.
Yeah.
You can't put 10 in and say, I get 10.
Yes,
If you put 10 in, it's just that
it's skewing the result.
you had an interrupted thought process. You just put one submission.
We might just check, because Cara did most of the work associated with social pinpoint. And she can tell us how she actually applied those things in terms of what you were seeing.
Take a seat.
So what I did is the program itself doesn't identify any of the double ups, quadruple ups. I did that manually by spreadsheet. And so I did a check on names and addresses that were coming through, and I did IP addresses. So whatever computer they used, if that came up 20 times, there's one that was over 75, but that was me putting all the written ones in, and so you can see in that respect, and you can go through and see what was happening. But the issue we really had was where you are allowed to actually put 3 submissions in, but one would be as a personal, one would be as part of a group or organisation, and then one might be as a business. And so they can do that, and it's absolutely okay. That's where we came up with one particular person, put one in for 5 different groups. You know, their name was in that group. You know, so that's where you had the double up and triple ups, but we couldn't legally take them out because every one, unless it was invalid, and we only had one invalid one, that we have to accept it. But one vote and the voting keys does not equal, you know, it doesn't skew the results really. It's how you view it and how you view the comments as well. And so we might have 65 votes saying we vote for this, but you might have 100 comments that say something different. It's you get to weigh that up as a council, and it's not, you know, on a numbers basis.
I think we really need that, because a lot in the public, and I will say I have seen it here as well, that the consultation is like a vote. Whereas you could have 100 come in with only one argument, and you could have 20 with 20 different arguments, and it's the weight of the argument and the credence of the arguments that you're meant to balance. Then you're meant to pull that back, and it's only one component of the decision-making process. And yet for many people, it's the all and sundry of it, and it's not. It's only one component, and it's only a balance. It's not and the winner is.
And so
That's how we're meant to take it.
So I suggest next time that we put some of that in the documentation before we go out.
I think that,
Explain that.
the frontliner of, because the expectation has been unfair on us of, you know, we told you, you know, 20 told me the same, but 5 told me different, and they were quite interested.
Well,
But common sense prevails when you read it through them.
For us, yes, but
Right.
not for those that are putting them in. We need that there for those that.
There was a heap of submissions where they only focused on one question. You know,
I think.
Well, 2 actually, yeah, it was just 2 things they ticked, straight to it and gone. And it was like, well,
So we've got the
Have you
system,
even
we've
read your
got that
consultation?
system, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
That
the
was
point, we've got
explained,
that. There's a system fit the purpose.
I think one of the values of being in a smaller community is you generally know, or someone knows who they are. So you can generally know, well, he's against everything council's ever put in. So their weighting to me isn't as great as here's a guy who works in that area all the time and there's blah blah blah. So you take that into
The credence of the argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also the argument, guys, of everyone that didn't put it. So they're happy with their community.
Yeah.
You just don't go with the
It's
needs.
only the ones that are passionate either way.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Plenty of people haven't signed that petition.
Although I did sign it 3 times.
But at the end of the day, it is a very rare skill, Councillor Cathal.
Yeah.
Common sense.
well, you know, you showed through some of your decisions that you didn't go with the numerical things. You considered other issues before making a call, and so, but that's your right, because that's why you are elected.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, went out quite widely.
Cara, you're more than welcome to sit there if, you know, you shouldn't have
That's all
to
right,
come
'cause
back
I've
and
got laptops,
forwards.
I'm doing everything.
Okay, so Steve.
No, that's right. We should. So it was interesting. The number of submissions we received versus the number of submissions received for the LTP, and you know, despite messaging, you know, you can say this is actually quite important, because if you look at the LTP, don't you, and you look at some of the submissions and saying, hey, whether people are happy with their representation or they're not happy with their representation. Another way of dealing with that is to bring it through this sort of a process where you can actually control what is your representation and in that. But no, we didn't get a lot of submissions. It's done, you know, sort of just after the LTP one, so people were probably burnt out as well with submission campaigns. But the opportunity was there, and we did receive 58 submissions.
It does make you reflect back though, even on the elections process, like the poor vote turnouts, doesn't it? Like it's just mirrors Then you chuck the LTP in and it just exploded.
The other thing, it is preliminary, so it might be another reason why people, didn't necessarily engage as much, because it isn't that next version, right, which is a more formal version. But West Otago definitely left out with some ideas there, didn't they? And so then we started getting into the nuts of the, or the nub of the question. So this just reflects the results of that. I think you'll generally find that of the 58 submissions, because it's not overwhelming, is it, in numbers, but of those that submitted, there is that common, if you look at it across the board, there's this common view that the way that you currently structured it seems to be okay. Even the numbers of councillors, I thought they might have
Yes.
had a different view on that
That
one,
was
but
surprising.
no pay rise for you guys on that sort of an answer, is it? Yeah. I suppose when you think about it, I remember, who was it? I think it was ex-councillor Joe from Clinton.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. No, sorry, it was ex-councillor from Catlins. Your side of things, Dame Hillary.
Yeah.
And when we'd done this before, I do remember there was this discussion that you were looking at the time, reducing the number of councillors, and her response, I remember well, was, the amount of meetings that you've got to go to, the coverage you've got to deal with, and she said, if you add on another, area to me, she said, I'm not going to be able to do it, and still represent the people. And there's a big difference, isn't it, between how you represent at a provincial level, rural provincial level, versus somebody in the city. And they don't have the representation that you have, person to person, in any way, in that. And sorry, that was that one around the numbers quite heavily. And I think if you look at some of those comments, wasn't it quite clearly representative of that? Some people want more as well. And then the big discussion about at large, Councillor Graham, fairly clear of the 58. Again, it's not a lot, but ward is at large quite heavily favoured.
No.
Because they might be skewed by the just about 50% from West Otago. should be that. I mean, it is actually true.
People have been busy with Stoke lately, I can tell you.
They must be happy with their councillors.
Or not.
Yeah, the funding, the friction, I mean, no, we don't want to change anything. Absolutely sick of you and everything you do, but I wouldn't dare change a thing.
But those people don't write it.
Correct.
So that's just some of the comments. There's more, obviously, within the body of the report. There was the specifics, so you've got all those. Got all those there. The committee boards. Again, I suppose you've got to think of the skew with 50% of it being West Otago, that there'll be a high proportion you'd expect to keep the same, because they're in West Otago in terms of that ward. It does make it hard to sort of actually, what conclusions can you actually reach for some of these things? We just represent what the figures are, but you have to bear in mind the low number of responses and where they came from.
The overwhelming thing is to keep it as is, though, isn't it?
The one there where it says more, that 13.21%, do we know which ward that come from?
There were a few Milton ones.
I'm not sure if locations were in.
There was 3, wasn't there, Milton?
Origin, Milton.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say, and I think do they really know what a community board does or whatever? Because they're well serviced by promo, you know, so they don't see a need for it or they don't understand the community board so much.
Do the councillors understand community boards?
Oh, I think they do, and I think there was a comment the other day at a saying that for the ones that do read it, I was a bit taken back by that, but
You obviously
Sure.
took notice though.
Huh?
You obviously took notice of that comment.
Which one, Bruce?
oh no, that not every councillor reads the minutes of.
Well, I said that all the jobs I had, well, said it.
Oh, I always wondered.
It's still on the cards though that, you know, if you actually think, and I know we've had a discussion around the table before about other groups doing the same job. They sort of do the same job.
Yes.
It's not the same
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
haven't got the broad representation. You're still skewed by one group.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They don't.
Yeah.
The communities don't necessarily understand the
No.
community board. I did have a conversation with a submitter who wants community boards in Milton, and I did suggest to him that the flack that council gets would be then aimed at a lot would be aimed at the community boards.
What was the reply to that?
Not a lot,
No,
but you know, and
not
that's,
as much.
no, not as much, but it does.
Yeah.
Because I spoke to community representatives, John, and I don't know if I talked to Jock, but you know, that it might make people on community board like, I don't want to say the word, but it might make
Don't let that stop you.
vigorous submitters or something, should I say? I don't know. Might pay to get them on a community board to see how the other half lives a wee bit.
And I suppose I've been real lucky over the years that you go to the different groups and like I go to Waihola looking forward and you think, yeah, it's pretty similar to a community board. The only thing it is totally dependent on whoever turns up in the room. Whereas a community board, you've voted, you've got your mandate, you've got your finances, you've got credence behind you. And you often see that how the community board, they have to turn up every 6 weeks and they have to follow a process. Whereas you see the fluctuations over the years, that's sort of like who's fair getting in. I will say, like when I first came as mayor, Lawrence was just like, God, everything was happening in Lawrence. There was a function and a festivities every second week. And then they drop off and then a different group comes through, a whacker going forward, have a strong, they sort of have project orientated oscillation, but it's what works for the communities. And to actually say, well, Waihola, I now want you to have a community board. Their group seems to be really good for their community, and the community board seems really good for their community. And probably the odd one out was Balclutha because they had nothing. Everyone else sort of had a ginger group.
But looking forward, because it's not just now, it's forward going ahead. We talk about what's down our main street and what's going to be going ahead in another, 4 or 5 years. Well, it's the same with this. Look at our district, how vast it is, pulling the groups together, and whether it be Balclutha have a community board, and Milton, the two bigger areas. I still think looking forward, you got to think, are they going to super city us? Because it's going to happen at some stage.
Yeah.
Where is it where we can actually put a foot on the ground in this district, and they can suck us in all they like, think they are, but at least we've got a say. And we've already preempted and looked at it for our district.
Then you'd get an opportunity.
Sorry, I've got to go to John and Bruce.
So it's a really interesting discussion about the structure and the system we've got now. But will we ever actually have a discussion around the delegation and what the community boards actually do? Because I know some community boards around the country actually strike rates and actually have a greater involvement Now two community boards. So when does that discussion happen?
I know that they're trying to depower it, because could you imagine as us going into the long-term plan, if we were Central Otago, where I think it's something like 40% of your budget's controlled by the community boards, how the hell we would have held on, not knowing what was, so they're different than us, and we did that process.
So when does that discussion happen though?
So they're devolving, and the only way I've seen is that, a community board does the community things, but some of I do know that, like my other brother was on the Rommel Community Board for years, and it was basically just after amalgamation. It was a pseudo council. They never gave away the council. They never truly embraced the amalgamation, and it really causes trouble for the budget.
But who set those delegations?
Council must look at staff, I suppose, because there's
So it's not a
totally
discussion
different
where
than
that's
us.
my question is, does the actual delegations and what community boards do, does that ever come up for discussion?
I hope not.
No,
This part is it part of the representation review?
not really, because it's the establishment of community boards. The representation review doesn't determine the scope or decision-making things. That's your responsibility as council.
Thank you.
Yeah, some councils go a long way down that pathway, others don't go that far.
Can you imagine if we had tried to hold together last week, knowing that there was 40% of it was out of our control, and try as hard as we could, the 40% to obliterate the 60. I can see why they're devolving.
Oh, it's understandable, but you've got to ask those questions.
Let's ask the question. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about it. Thank you.
Bruce.
I just wonder a value of community boards is were you on a community board?
Yeah.
As where young ones can get that experience before they might be in two minds whether they want to stand for council. They can become an elected member through the community board where the I don't know, the workload isn't so great or something, or get that bit of experience. And you might be able to get younger people have that. I don't know if the workload is greater or smaller.
I think I'm just trying to think, I think every councillor from West Otago since 1989 has probably been a community board members first.
Right.
I'm trying to think.
So I see
Like
that
Jeff
value.
and Peter McPherson was, the guy, Hewitt, Norman Hewitt.
Your name.
Jeff.
God,
So most people did a term or two before which you get an understanding of the system, you get a relationship with staff. It is quite a good little. You probably hit the ground with 30-40% of knowledge.
And I'd have to say, and voting and things, you think, oh well, that one, they've shown a commitment to their community.
But also, just an observation, is that those councillors that have come up from the community board, and that it's also been helpful to us because, how do you describe it?
Carefully.
That when they, after having done the community board, they actually come up more polished. Maybe that's a better word to describe it in that sense. Because I do remember getting grief reasonably frequently from elected members that were on the community board, and the relationship's far more positive with those elected members being around the table here as a result, whatever is the result. But and that, so it actually there's a benefit both ways, definitely from that side.
Thank you for the kind words, Steve.
Polish.
Polished, I must remember that, polished. Because my journey on the community board was back in 2002, whenever it was, but Juno was the mayor then and Karen Keogh was the CEO. They were fun days, but getting back to like when we had the soapbox in Milton, I actually advocated because you can see like there's clearly a disjoint there with the goings on that's been happening there. And I said to the locals that I was talking to there when I was advocating, I said, if you had a community board, you could work alongside your councillors and council to get the desired outcome. It just seems there's so many different fractions there all trying to achieve different stuff, whereas we can get them all together.
They've got their group in Milton and I think of the Kim Schillers and the Dale Weibers and Jill McIntosh's strong, good leaders.
Mm.
And I will say that a couple of the times where there's been a bit of friction, I think, sorry, I don't know your name. I've lived in the wider area all my life, and you've never actually been part of anything.
But that's what I'm alluding to, like formalise that group, because that's all they are.
But Dale and
Group.
Kim, and
If they're a community
they don't need to be formal.
Well, they do it a community board, and then that's the go-to for the community, and that's it. The community's board's the go-to to the local councillors. We're advocating.
Ally.
But that's a question you would ask perhaps in your next process. You can sit here today and say, you would suggest that the community haven't actually fed that back, that's what they want. And I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but I can remember last time when it was discussed, all the communities, whether it be the Clinton, Awaka going forward, and they've all got their groups, and you're almost stepping into what they've already got. And those groups that they've got are actually really strong, and they see that those groups they probably are using them now a bit like community board without having to be funded through the so I'd be careful in almost saying that these different areas need community boards. They've actually got to want that first, and this is the process for them to put their.
Well, that's right, and we're seeing signs of that already, though, aren't we?
And I do wonder who it would attract, because I think I go to West Otago, and it's always lovely, positive people. I go to West Florence, and if you've got a community board that are polished. No, but you know what I mean. They're there for positive reasons. If the motivation was to come on to have a jolly rummage around, I don't know whether you'll get the community board spirit. And then what happens to, let's say, Milton to Dale and Kim and the groups that are there? Do they just fade away?
The safest thing to do is nothing.
But one of the things you will need to do today, though, is give direction one way or the other. So it's true that if you put out a proposal that has no additional community boards, you only need one person to suggest a community board through that process, and the commission will look at it as a consequence, right? But you also, our job or your job at this part is also to make a conscious decision based on preliminary feedback and any other discussions you've had on this, is to make a conscious decision. Do you wish to add another community board or community boards, or do any other alterations? And so it's not saying that you sort of can't go, oh, we won't worry about that. You actually do need to say, we don't believe that we will put that forward at this point. That's valid, but you just need to be able to do that.
Gaming.
So if you put forward saying that we think there's enough interest from people in Milton to ask if you want a community board, does all that information of how it's funded, what they've got to do, all that process, does that go forward with the question?
Well, you would expect to have some information about that.
Because I think that's an important thing.
That was going to be my question.
What's your community board rate? John?
You're about 115. We're about
$115, I think.
We're about 76, I think.
You're 76.
Michelle,
By the bigger population.
That's a fair question, though. If you're going to say it's going to cost you $100 in racks at the community board, then we're
well, you've only got to look at that graph there to see what they're actually saying.
58 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted
Well,
to say.
44, keep the same.
Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, community boards cannot go out for funding. So we have our two promotion as well. That is the funding arm that goes out for, can get all the other things. So they do come back through us, but that's funding arm. So those other groups that are out there that are doing that's good, because you've already got them established. Plus you've got your other leadership sitting there, and I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot of times around the table, there's a lot of things that come that probably wouldn't come to us. We wouldn't have to stress about all those little,
Water in the
I won't say the
basket.
word probably, all those little fluffy things.
Yeah, but you look at what Hull are looking forward and the like,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got groups out, they do exactly.
Yeah, I know
They are
but
driving, they don't quite have
Yeah.
the structure, but they're still.
I
bloody good
just
groups.
think, you know, it's a question that needs to go out. That people may, you know, decide otherwise.
Bruce.
I think community boards are like the old councils used to be, where the councillor used to worry about that pothole that needed to be fixed. And nowadays, the council is a governance side of it, and the community board is fixing the potholes and widening that rubbish bin.
No, I disagree with that, because as she just explained, Jules explains it quite well, generally, that they are quite expensive messages. If you're just going to put service requests in, you've lost
Yeah.
what that means about. They're very expensive people to turn up just to put service requests in. That's not what it should be for. Jules explains it very well.
But I don't think Councillor Graham would be just suggesting the community board, you're reflecting it as a community board meeting, as opposed to community board being the eyes and ears on the ground of certain things, and has that reduced, you know.
I think it's like the borough councils used to be, a councillor back in pre-1987 or whatever, is a completely different beast to what a councillor is now, isn't it? And I think the council, what the councillors used to do then is more aligned to how the community board works. I'm not saying that for service requests, but the level of what they looked into and all that and worried about is different to what councillors do today on a council. Don't you think?
So we're going to be looking for direction today, whether we go out to consult,
Yeah.
whether we want more or less.
Yeah, I mean, you can.
So I'll speak for
like
my
Ben-
board and say, we've got our community, we've got 3 small community groups. I don't know if they would like another layer. So, but I can't really speak for other wards within the community. You know, it's really the direction of where the council or city, they know their communities. I mean, I'm happy to support.
I still
I'm happy
say-
to support other councillors for that question of more community boards, but thinking of my own constituents, the people that I represent, thinking of those three little groups. One meets twice a year, one's meeting every 2 months, one probably has about 8 odd meetings a year, and then that's a representation of all the other little wee small ones that meet once a month or once every 6 months, or they do one thing a year. And I'm thinking, well, would they? And I'm like, nah, for them, no, they're not interested in having more. But maybe, I mean, we've got to make a decision on it. We're going to go out with it today.
It's
So.
hard when there's only 4 comments though about it, and
See, I said
But
the other
you
way,
know.
Dana, if there was a hell of a need
Yeah.
for it, there'd be 400 there. Going around the district,
Yeah.
I'm reticent to, let's go to
Yeah,
Catlins.
we wouldn't know.
I'll go and tell all the old, the guys and Hills and all that have been down there churning away. Now, look, we'll just put you to the side. We've got this other idea because 2 people said it.
It's getting harder to get the volunteers for those groups.
The actual groups like Waihola looking forward and that, they've got good strong numbers and
At the moment,
they're
they
there
do.
because they want to be there.
Sorry, Mal.
John Cotton was adamant that he wanted to get rid of the community boards, and I'm sorry, I can't remember what his argument was for that, but he pushed forward, let's get rid of them.
Yes.
Ally.
I actually don't support any more community boards, and I'm not against those that are there, because the 2 that are there have worked really well for their communities. But I strongly am against new ones. I mean, put in new community boards, and I can remember that. I'm commenting this from years ago when I worked at council, really, and going to it's a huge time commitment for council staff, and I can remember talking to other councils that had a lot of community boards, and it was almost become a nightmare for them So I'm commenting from comments that, maybe, and so I do think you need to take that into consideration. It would be a huge increase in staffing, time and costs for more community boards. That would be one. Not against what we've got, the structure we've got, I support, but I do think the other communities are looking after themselves.
Yeah. The only one I'd question would be, when I look around the room thinking of all our awards, would be Milton actually. But I mean, unfortunately, we've just,
It's Torrey-Mouth Amenities Society, Milton Area Promotions and Project Bruce, but that's not to say that a community board wouldn't come forward with different people from out in the community. But if they haven't come on board, like for the swimming pool one, not just all of Project Bruce, but the swimming pool one, if people haven't sort of got into that, then they're against the pool, and that's fine. But then what other things are they gonna, I don't know.
So what I was going to say in closing, Brian, was it's up to we've got to put it out there to offer it to the communities, and it's up to them to grasp it or not. So I don't know why we should be debating it so seriously.
We put out a proposal though, don't we?
Well, we have. There it is there.
no, we have to.
So they're going to have to grab on that.
Well, when you say, just the Local Government Commission criticised us last time because we didn't sort of do any homework on community boards, right? And so now we've done some homework on community boards, and you are not obliged in your proposal to put in there that there must be a community board or there shall be a community board. In Bruce, for example, you're not obliged. If you have your debate, your discussion, and you say, well, we don't think there's enough pressure, demand, whatever, from our preliminary consultation, put it in, and that's what your view is, and you're perfectly entitled to say that, and that's what you'll conclude, and away we go. And that's all the process asks you to do. Process isn't forcing you to say, oh, we need to have a board. What it is requiring you to do is having the debate and the discussion and saying, all things being equal, we'll err on the side of not putting one in at this point. It doesn't stop a big community group, and it's happened before, putting their hand up and saying they want.
Yeah, because what I'm,
Oh, no, they're going to have 100 things. That's the end of it.
So we're
here.
and what I'm thinking is what happens because we were doing the long-term plan, that people were sort of absorbed with that, so they never really took notice of this, and they knew it was just the first phase. What if all those people that want one didn't put forward?
They will still have that opportunity in the formal process. That's what I was saying to Worship, is that if they see it and that council's view was we won't put one at this point for the formal proposal, doesn't stop a big community groundswell or upswell or whatever of saying, hey, we really want a Bruce community.
You're not but on the head who might come.
Upswell wanting something in Bruce, for example, or somewhere else. But that's them exercising that right,
Yes.
and then it goes in. So that's all it is. It's not a big deal.
That's okay then.
Right, so we've got a couple of minutes before smoker. That last one is there anything else?
Oh, well, I'll pose the other thing, Your Worship, is that in Ben's section, there'll be an option section around community boards. Like, probably just thinking.
So we have the discussion.
Yeah, probably from a timing perspective, we can advise them that you've had a discussion, and it shouldn't be too big a deal to get to a conclusion relatively quickly for that item. So we don't regurgitate the same discussion if you want. So
there will be a question in the consultation as to whether you want community.
Only if that's what we decide.
That's what I'm saying. Are we going to decide that or not?
That's after this guy comes.
I'm just
in.
saying, when Ben comes, there'll be one section in here that says you need to make a call. But you've had the debate, so that we can tell him you've had the debate, and you can just make the call. That will be relatively quick, which is good.
Yeah.
Right, so we're done for smoker, or is there any other thing we've got to think of?
From our perspective, we were just waiting for the next section, which is actually taking you through the guts of it, and what are you going to actually choose? So we'll let the expert take you through that.
So has anyone got anything to throw in the hat before smoker time?
Can you turn the heat pump on?
Karen?
I've just got an answer to one of your questions. So for question 10, you asked Was it mostly the, well, particular board saying we
Oh,
want more? No, it was from generally all over the place. So it wasn't just that one area saying we want more. It was pretty much everywhere.
Spread out.
Thank you.
So somebody from each area said yes.
Keep the same.
So we can
Thank
pick it
you.
up.
And that was only 7 people.
Yeah.
And Jock,
Did you turn
Hello.
it off?
you need to
welcome Dean. Dean, come down from Auckland to help us. So good effort. We really appreciate it. I hope you got your suntan lotion with you. We're having a balmy old run of weather at the moment. So, Dean, we've already gone through sort of the start, as Steve's told you, but I'd love to hand over to you now for your guidance as we take on the next bit of this. You're more than welcome to sit or stand, whichever way you feel comfortable.
I'll start off standing and
Excellent.
thank you very much for having me here. I do appreciate the opportunity to present to council on the representation review. Dale Ofsosky, the electoral officer for the District Council, couldn't be here this morning, but he does send his apologies. I understand you've gone through the preliminary consultation this morning. That's quite helpful. There is a bit of an agenda to get through. A lot of these items go through quite quickly, and other parts we'll go into a bit of detail. More than happy to be interrupted at any point if you have any questions or want me to clarify anything. When we get to the options for the initial proposal that's coming up, it'd be really good to get some feedback from you. Have an open and collaborative discussion with a view that at the end of this workshop, ideally we have some consensus as to which option you'd like to proceed with for the initial proposal. We've got up here, we'll talk about the objective for today. The Māori Wards Bill will cover and then get into the representation review. As I said, you've already covered the preliminary consultation, so then we can start talking about the options, wards, community boards, what we want to do, get some guidance from you, and then finish off with the timetable. So today's objective is to get some direction from you as to which option we're going to go with for the initial proposal. It's scheduled to go to council on the 26th of July, and only one option can be resolved at that meeting, the 26th of July. So after that meeting, one option will be resolved, and then we'll put out a public notice advertising the right for anyone to make a submission. So anyone in the community that has strong feelings, either in support or in opposition to the proposal, can make a submission. Council will then hear those submissions and decide whether or not council wishes to continue with the initial proposal or make amendments for the final proposal. But I want to stress that at that meeting, only one option can be resolved. So in a perfect world, we would come out of today's workshop, one option, and that's the option in the initial proposal. The local government bill, you're probably hearing a fair bit about. It's definitely important for councils that have Māori wards. Key parts of the bill is that it will require councils that have established Māori wards or constituencies without a poll to hold a poll with the upcoming election next year. Obviously, Clutha District Council doesn't have Māori wards, so there won't be a poll required. The other part of the bill is that it makes some adjustments to the election timing, so of course that will affect every council. The other part of that bill I just wanted to mention is that it will restore the right of electors to demand a poll if council does decide to introduce Māori wards. Prior to the recent legislative change, if council decided to introduce Māori wards, 5% of the electors could sign a petition to demand a poll on the matter. That was repealed by the last government. This bill will put it back into place. So come 2026, if this council decided to introduce Māori wards, under this bill, 5% of electors could demand a poll on that, and a simple majority would have to vote in favour for Māori wards to be established.
Can I just have just so that I know the mechanisms moving forward? So at next year's local body election, there's going to be a question, and it's going to be a yes and a no. Do you want a married? Obviously, we're not doing it, but I'm up in Hawke's Bay or something. Do you want a married ward? Do you not? There's only the yes and the no. They add them up, and righto.
And a simple majority will bind that council.
I suspect it will be a simple majority, emphasis on the simple.
Might have started the presentation.
Oh, sorry. It's okay. Where were we up to? Sorry.
About that.
Here,
Page
oh,
12,
yeah.
25, 25. 24.
Oops, oops.
I can flick through. That's
Sorry.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't do what I wanted to do.
You're there, Pete.
All right, so the government bill. The other part of the bill that which will affect you makes some changes to the election timing. It's almost entirely a result of the postal system struggling to keep up. The bill largely brings dates forward for the start of the process, but it doesn't bring the end forward, so it's a longer process. The overall timetable starts earlier, nominations open earlier, close earlier, voting period opens earlier. Voting pack delivery time has been extended, so New Zealand Post will have 14 days to legally get the mailers delivered. Currently it's 6 days. The voting period therefore goes from 22.5 days to 32.5 days. And the nomination period starts on a Monday instead of a Friday. So a few other tidy ups that they're doing there, but it's all part of the same bill, which is, I believe, having a second reading at the moment, pretty likely to be passed by the end of July.
It's Simon from the 19s.
Carol Simon, how are you? No, just one of our councillors was in the North Island.
Yep. So background of the review, Dale and I came down in April and gave an overview of the process. Preliminary consultation has now been undertaken. Determine preferred representation scenarios. That's the purpose of today's workshop. Resolve an initial proposal and then receive and hear submissions from the community on that proposal. Make any amendments as the council sees fit as a result of those submissions, and then resolve the final proposal. And then members of the community can submit appeals or objections on that final proposal. If the arrangements fall outside of the plus or minus 10% rule, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or if there are any appeals or objections on the final proposal, it must be referred to the local government commission. They'll review those arrangements. They may or may not hold hearings, and then they'll make a determination. So what is a review? It's a review of representation arrangements. How many councillors should be elected to council, and how should they be elected? Whether it's at large, from wards, and if they are from wards, which wards, how many members per ward, name and boundaries of those wards. Community boards, should more be established? Should the 2 existing boards be disestablished? How many members per community board, and then the names and boundaries of those community boards as well. This is also the opportunity to determine how many councillors are appointed to community boards. The status quo is there, 14 councillors from 8 wards, 12 community board members, 2 community boards, and the status quo currently not compliant with that plus or minus 10% rule. We have the current arrangements up here, and you can see there are 3 wards currently not compliant with the fair representation criteria. I'll recap what that is. That means that elected members should be representing about the same number of people. That number at the bottom there, next to total, 18,890. It's a total population. 14 councillors means that on average, councillors are representing 1,349 people. Question?
Yeah, a question. I sort of struggle because I quite believe these are on old census figures. Is that correct?
Right. So the population data that we must use for this review comes from the 2018 census. Statistics New Zealand every year, they provide an annual estimate, population estimate, but these estimates are used in the 2018 census. So it's estimates as of 2023, but from the 2018 census. The reason is that Statistics New Zealand can't get the data ready in time. They'll begin releasing some data from the 23 census, but it won't be available in the format that we need for this review.
Oh, thank you for that, but the chances are we could be quite compliant now.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So if this time next year statistics release their data, you're quite right. Those numbers could be different. Unfortunately, we really don't have a choice. We must use this data set.
Okay, thank you.
Pretty much every council has expressed the same. Totally unfortunate and disappointing.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, Ben, same point, you adjust it to make, say, time out our compliance. The census with today's census, we might actually be making it non-compliant.
Yeah.
The other way. So, it's rock and a hard place, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a totally fair point, and unfortunately, the answer is that we're bound by this process. A lot of it's in legislation, and we have to work with data and stats have provided us. Like I said, pretty much every council I've spoken to has had the exact same feedback.
You could make some pretty drastic changes, maybe like combining a couple of wards.
Yeah.
When there's probably no need.
So we've got a legal requirement to do this. That's it, we're going to do it. But also the 2018, there wasn't much faith in that just as a process. Do we put a note in the consultation to say that, because people are going to go, why are we doing this? And they're going to have the same argument in the end. Do we have the opportunity to put a note in saying that we're not overly thrilled with it, or we're going to stay ambivalent because it's the law?
Yeah, we do. When the public notice appears on your website or it's published in newspapers, there is room there for us to explain data.
I think because people will be going, why are you doing this? And have stupid council going back to that far to manipulate the system. And just see it now.
On the issue of compliance, you don't have to make all your wards compliant. You're not compliant with that plus or minus 10% rule. For example, if you decided that there's a very compelling reason to keep the exact same arrangements, it doesn't mean you can't do it, but there just have to be good reasons, because the proposal would go to the local government commission and they would want to know, what have you done to try and make it compliant, and what reasons do you have for proposing arrangements that are not?
I always thought that was hard and fast. We always said, are you saying we could roll with that 16% for Bruce and the lights, and that's everyone's fine?
It would go to the local government commission and I'd be asking these questions.
Bruce.
Yeah, just on that point, I think Stewart Island has got its own council. It's
Yeah.
just a very small portion of the Southland District Council. That must be way up 10% down. But the point I perhaps was going to make or ask anyway is there's no reason why we have to wait 6 years to do a representation of the rest there.
You could do another one in 3 years.
Yeah, I wonder whether perhaps we should, rather than 3 years, we should take it away from the long-term plan time frame, do it in 4 years or something like that, because there's a lot happening this time of year if we're doing a long-term plan as well. So
Timelines are quite specific. You have to do one this year,
yes,
and 31st of July is the legal deadline for the initial proposal. So you can have some flexibility. Do you do it in 3 years, or do you wait another 6 years? But if you do decide to do one in 3 years, it has to be done according to the timeline. 31st of July for the initial proposal, and 3rd of December for the final proposal.
so we couldn't decide to do one in 4 years' time.
That's correct. You couldn't do one next year, or in 2 years. You'd have to wait 3 years.
Yeah, but 4 years to get out of single LTP.
Just told you 3 and 6.
You have to do them within the 3 years.
What if the electoral, that's a what if. Good idea, Bruce, but ideas aren't allowed when you go to Wellington, you know that. How are you doing?
On the point of Stewart Island, you're right, it is a ward of Southland District Council. Its population is nowhere near within plus or minus 10% of the district average. It is something like 70% out. In that case, they do have pretty compelling reasons why it shouldn't be grouped in with another ward to retain its specific community of interest. And the argument from the council is that it should have its own representation rather than being joined in with another ward. I'm not sure exactly how easy it would be to make that argument in this case.
Ali.
So when looking at the numbers, if we jig the boundaries a wee bit and put a little bit of what is currently Bruce Ward into Kaimatau, that could work.
Yeah, so we'll go over the options in a little bit. That what you've described is one of them.
Yeah.
One option, getting a little bit of the presentation, one of them would be to combine those two wards. One would be to move parts of Bruce into Kaitanga. You do have to move quite a bit to make them perfectly compliant. You don't have to move all of that. You don't have to go out with a proposal that's completely compliant, but demonstrating that you are trying, thought about it, and there's good reasons for what you're doing is what's
Because, I mean, communities of interest is actually the important
correct.
thing to be considered, and that's what worries me with Kaitanga, because their communities of interest is definitely towards Balclutha, not towards Milton. So that would be my comment there. And so West Otago Ward, they're minus. Do we have to do what? Yeah, what do we have to do there?
I've always taken from Clinton.
Right. I wondered where we took it from.
That wiper heave,
Yeah.
but we're certainly stretching it now to hold a community of influence.
Yeah.
If we were wanting to make West Otago compliant, there is a mesh block in the Clinton ward that could be moved. We can look at it later, whether or not you think it's appropriate to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Just pointed out communities of interest. It is one of the three principles. It's probably the most important one. The Commission don't put them in an order of priority, but from my point of view, it is retaining those communities of interest is most important, not drawing a boundary that goes right through a defined community and not joining two communities together that share few commonalities. Effective representation means we should be looking at the most appropriate number of councillors, whether 14 is the right number or whether it should be reduced or increased, as well as is it suitable to be electing councillors from wards, or should they be elected at large, or a combination of the two. Their representation, which is described, means that each member should be representing approximately the same number. Got them in here, a little bit more detail. So communities of interest, by the sounds of things, they are pretty well identified here in Clutha. We know where the communities of interest are. It's where you go to school and where you shop, where you go to work, etc. Perpetual, functional, and political. But like I said, they seem to be pretty well established. Effective representation. So we're going to review the total number of elected members, whether they're in individual wards or at large or a mixture. A lot of this should be informed by the consultation that has occurred. It looks to me like, for the most part, the community thinks that the current arrangements work pretty well. And I didn't see any significant appetite for change. Saw there were some comments about potentially establishing another community board, although that's something that could come up in the submissions process. There was a groundswell of interest in a new community board.
I'm wondering just, I know fine well there is no impetus here, but I think as a leadership group we've got to take leadership, I say. If we took a helicopter view of it, and if we were honest with ourselves, where is the female representation for a kickoff? Where is we're old, we're white, we're male, if democracy is truly to represent our communities, there should be a cross section, and I look at it that there is things we're doing, like having afternoon meetings, but also, like you read 2,700 pages last week as part of what you had to do for last week, and seeing there's 14 of you, it's, the recompense that you get is embarrassing. The only way we're actually going to be able to elevate it up and change anything is to be bold enough to to reduce the numbers. There is no appetite in the community, but then the communities saying that they're dissatisfied with what we're doing, where we go. There's a whole lot of dissatisfaction and I demand that you stay the same. I see that I'm embarrassed when, Steve and I'll be talking of, there's a workshop and there's like, holy hell, we might as well just, if you could leave your jobs and just come here full time. You'll be on less than minimum wage, but unless we've got the courage to at least put the problem out there, we're never ever going to solve it. And until recompense was that, I'd love to see, I don't want to, like a young solo mother would look at this and go, I can't afford to do that gig. I'd love to do it, but I can't afford it. So it's turkeys vote for Christmas, but how do we actually, something's got to change, John, and we're never going to change it.
Well, in saying that, and I said this last time, and use it as an example, West Otago, 75% of the people that stood in West Otago were female for the ward.
And didn't get voted. Yeah.
Well, one did.
Yeah, but this. Yeah.
So when to say that they don't stand, 75 was one male and 3 females stood for 2 positions.
That'd be reflective of the wider district.
What I'm saying is at least
change.
they stood. Then the decision-making process was held by the public.
What would have been the youngest candidate? Oh, there was the young fella in Milton, but then after that, we're heading on up.
Clusa had a young person.
Yeah,
Brody.
Brody Gill stood
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, so we had 2
Yeah.
people under 50 at the last election.
And there was,
You're estimating our ages, how
Yeah.
dare you?
All right.
And their
Two under
sexuality.
60 of them.
And their sexuality, because he said something about no females. It's like, what?
No, but it's poor representation. It's not a cross section of society, but we're not willing to change
when
anything.
society elect their cross section.
Yeah.
Worship. Like,
Exactly.
in our ward,
Can you change
there was
that?
one female stood, it was myself and another lady stood for our ward. So it's society.
And for
determines the cross
Mayoralty,
section.
there was a female stood.
You can't make
Two of them.
voters just.
I'm just saying that we're not prepared to look at the fundamental. We've got issues here that I don't think we've got a cross representation. Well, quite obviously we haven't. We've
Yeah,
got
but-
what was voted, but people couldn't
Do
put
you
their
think
name
the
forward.
money's going to make any difference?
Yeah.
Because, I don't.
Yeah,
Who's doing this job for the money then?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that, well, we all know that Councillor Payne had to employ a person so that he could be here last week. That's what we're getting down to.
We've all been in that boat. right?
Yeah, I know we have, so
And all
that's
that
what I
does-
mean.
all
Our
that does is
holidays.
show our commitment to them.
Yeah,
Our
what we're
holidays for the time off.
Well, I employed people to make me a wage
Yeah.
because the council's not paying it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But yeah, the thing is though, your worship, is that you think about it, it's either passion that drives you, because it's certainly not a career driven choice.
No,
It's passion that's driving
not
this
money.
vehicle, so.
I think it's who's excluded from the process that we should be considering. And there is a considerable amount of exclusion just purely on, I can't do that.
But it's been like this for 35 years.
I know. That's why it's probably a time to at least consider.
What, is it
change.
broken? Do you think it's broken?
Yeah.
Does anyone else in the room think it's broken?
No, I don't.
No, I don't think we are excluding.
We're not, the system is.
Oh,
Having 14 councillors,
you.
already people look and go, holy hell, I can't leave my job to do that. I can't do anything.
They can if they make sacrifices. I've been through there that you have to sacrifice your holiday pay and
Yes.
everything to come to council. If you really want to be on council, you will be.
Yeah, I had to give up so much.
To say, hey, that we're excluding those days, are we going to bring in a quota system, right? So many have got to be that, so many have got to be that, so many have got to be that.
No,
We
but
might
we
as
should
well
be
shoot
doing
South Africa.
everything we can to allow them. Well, pretty much by
You can't do it at
afternoon
the expense
meetings
of the
and low
ratepayers.
wages, we've excluded most of the population.
You can't do it at the expense of the representation of the ratepayers. You can cut it down and say, so there's, everybody can get whatever, a livable wage, but we're going to cut it down to six elected members. So, all right, we won't worry about Torrey Mouth, we won't worry about Kelso, or they're not, and as Hillary says, I'm not going to be able to go to those meetings. You can't change it all just to on some excuse that we're not getting a fair demographic representation.
I'll go to Gaynor and then Bruce.
So if you want to stand, you stand. You decide and you give up things to be able to get here. Like everybody around this table, I had to, and I certainly wasn't here for the money, because if I was, I would have stayed working at work those days. I always came down here. And anybody, any age, can actually stand. And I've had different people ask different questions of me different times. There's been elections, and it's up to each individual to make that decision and that choice. But anybody actually can stand.
Bruce.
Kevin actually was.
Sorry, Kevin, did you have your hand up?
First, yeah.
I want to say something. Less people to get a greater remuneration would have more time to put in to what Mayor Cadogan had said. Once upon a time we used to get this much information, now we get this much information. So less people being paid more would have more time to go through all that information and research it, and perhaps come up with more information to come around the table here. I just did some figures in the year May to May, just from the emails, the workshops, the standing committees and the council meetings that are on, not the regulatory citizenship ceremonies, the soapboxes, the special meetings and the bus trips. But I got 10,511 pages of information put in my email box, which if you look at it for 240 days of the year that we work, that's like full-time, 240 working days, 50 pages a day you get. And if I'd known that when I came on, given what I currently was working on before I became a councillor, I would have said no, because I couldn't do it justice. Because I had to knock things on the head to do this. The money didn't mean anything to me. I wasn't here for the money. That wasn't a thing. But allowing, if we had say 8 or 9 councillors and they get $40,000+ a year, would attract a bigger demographic of people if it's communicated, and I think that would be something that should be looked at. The members where we have one elected member in one community, I find over the last year that they seem to have more contact with their communities than what the 4 members in Balclutha have. And I don't know about Milton, but the 4 members in the Balclutha ward, we don't meet or get together and discuss what options are around in Balclutha. We're 4 independents, and I don't think we need 4 independents in Balclutha doing that. Less members, better decision making around the table. Smaller group, you'll get better decision making. You'll get more individual input and more discussion. And I would be thinking that we should go along what Mayor Cadogan is saying and say, can we look at an option where we get a bigger representation of the population around this table? That's my comments.
Bruce.
I was just going to be utterly facetious and say we could have a female ward as well.
All I ask then is, because I can see I'm going to lose this, and that's sad. Next time you're out and about and you go to Christchurch with the zone meeting or further afield, tell me you've got 14 councillors, and watch those other councillors laugh at you. And then go and have a look at the pictures of other councils and how do they get, gee, they've got a cross-section of society. I'm just saying that we're not in step with where the overwhelming majority of councils are. 14 is seen as unwieldy, over the top. You tell them the wage, and it's like, oh God, and none of us are here for the money. Well, that's bloody lucky, isn't it? That in itself is already, that is incredibly lucky that we are all in a position that we can say that. But what about the overwhelming majority of society that would have to go, sorry, I love my community, I want to serve my community, but I can't do it. So we've already excluded the overwhelming, and I'll just leave that there. I can see it's not the right time, it's not going to be fine, but sooner or later we're going to evolve.
Even you haven't got any community committees in Balclutha, whereas all the other areas have community committees, and that's how we all get together, and that makes a huge difference.
I see that. I've seen that over the last year. Councillors come here and they say they've met with this people, and they've met with these people, and they've met with this person, and their communities are going ahead. Yeah, Balclutha doesn't have that.
No.
Bruce.
I do have a comment, actually. We did look at this at the last representation review, just how we could have a fewer members. It was one of the options or proposals put in front of us. Didn't get much further because there are difficulties in, so if we have 10 representatives, just how we split the district up to represent that plus or minus 10% if we start in a ward-based system. I think there's probably no appetite to change from a ward-based system. It's just splitting that up. So with some of the way it could be split up to keep that 10%, it just didn't look natural in our communities of interest. So, I mean, it's certainly something we should consider, but it does have difficulties in a district like ours too.
It is difficult. I've tried to do it. It could be done if you sat down.
Possibly that's something that we could have a look at, like just to, if that was brought back from the last representation review, just to show it has been considered and it's worth considering again. There might be more input around here might help.
Yeah. Ellie, followed by John.
I think we haven't got enough information, unfortunately, to be making that decision, because I can remember we have looked at it before, as Bruce said, and so that's probably the sad bit, that we perhaps haven't got the information. I could go to even 11 for a start off, because it probably has to be a starting point, but without the real information of how those communities are affected, it is hard to make that call, because I can remember it did make quite a difference to the, and so that's the problem, and I know you go to other councils and they're don't have as many councillors, but you have to remember that the large geographical area that we also cover, and I think that actually has to be considered. But look, I'd be welcome to considering it, but I don't believe we've got the information here today to show what the impact is of changing it down to say 9 or 11. And are we too late? We're probably too late to do that.
There are one or two options in there with 9, which I resurrected from the last review.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
John.
Just so if you're going to make change, now's the time to do it, because then it'll be another 3 or 6 years to do it. So just to clarify that. Of note too, after the 15 months we've been here, that Councillor Barron and yourself actually agree on something that was quite exhilarating.
Always good.
But then it opens up the conversation around the greater rural wards, doesn't it? Like it's and sorry, Ellie, but I think if we're going to make, it's not too late to change. This is why we're having this meeting, is to actually explore those options of change now, and hence Ben being here. So.
I do, and I know I'm as bad as anyone, but it's incongruous that we take an oath to the wider district, and we have to be honest with ourselves, and I'm putting my hand up too. Over the last few weeks, we've skirted very close to the bunker on a number of occasions. And I think if we're ever going to, 1989 is quite a long time away, if we're ever going to truly evolve as a council, to, as I say, it's incongruous with the oath with we went blooming close a couple of times to bunkering ourselves last week. We didn't, and I thank you for that, but we have to acknowledge that we went close. And how do we break that down? How do we stop it? We're getting overwhelming feedback from we're getting a lot more feedback from our communities that there's a dissatisfaction with representation, and yet we're not willing to look at making changes.
They all said, yeah, the majority of people said they were happy with it. So how can you say there's an overwhelming?
No, I mean, and like this is the consultation is only one part of the due diligence we do, and we all get out there and feel the love.
That was stemmed from one article. Right?
And there's only 56 submitters, remember?
Yeah, and this
Out of
one,
80,000,
but this
so-
is only one component of our process. So, but anyway, we digress, but we had to get it off our chest as well. So let's see where it goes.
Well, how about we start talking about the options then?
Now this is.
Yeah, okay, so I did come up with 6 options. Option 1, we could keep the status quo, understanding the level of compliance. So what would happen there is proposal goes out to the community, they can make submissions. If no changes were made to the final proposal, it would have to be referred to the local government commission. They would be looking very closely at every instance of non-compliance. They'll be asking questions. What have you done to try and make them compliant? What reasons do you have for not making those changes? Option 2, we could keep the status quo, make a small adjustment to West Otago and combine the Bruce and Kaitangata Mato wards. We could keep the status quo, move parts of Bruce to Kaitangata Mato. Option 4, we could add a councillor to Bruce. You don't move 2 small mesh blocks there to make the arrangements compliant, but whether or not you want to add a councillor is of course a question. And then options 5 and 6 are a little bit more drastic, not keeping the status quo at all. You could amalgamate several wards and keep 2 city wards, can I call them that, Balclutha and Milton, and then it's optional whether or not you want to have at-large councillors. So let's talk about them. Status quo here, we'd still have 3 wards non-compliant. Questions would be asked, how have you tried to address the non-compliance in West Otago? How have you tried to address the non-compliance in Bruce, Kaitangata, Mato? You would need to have pretty compelling reasons for the non-compliance in Bruce, Kaitangata, Mato. West Otago, not non-compliance beyond 10%, it's relatively small. It's about minus 11%. Yeah, so could be retained, would have to be referred to the local government commission, and they would need good reasons for this proposal. Now, option 2 is what I mentioned before, small adjustment made to West Otago and then combining 2 wards together, the one that's too big, Bruce, and the one that's a bit too small, Kaitangata Mato. This would result in compliance. Of course, we have to address the question of, does this actually reflect your communities of interest? Is it really appropriate to have those 4 councillors representing Bruce and Kaitangata Mato? Or are those communities distinct and they really do need separate representation?
Ben, are you wanting us to have discussion on the individual?
Right
after,
yeah. See what you think. This is a close-up of the area in West Otago that was identified as potentially could move. 40 people live in this one mesh block. You would have moved Quinton to West Otago, and it would make West Otago ward compliant. There are some other areas that also could move, but they were a little bit less convenient. There's 2 in Lawrence to Opeka that potentially could move into West Otago. It would make West Otago compliant, but it would make Lawrence to Opeka non-compliant.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we shift ratepayers, and that's what you're doing, things change for them because you belong to West Otago ward, then there's a couple of things that you pay on rates that you wouldn't if you lived elsewhere. So is this where you get where people then submit in and This is where you're going to get your arguments and your issues, isn't it?
Yeah,
Commissioners.
these 40 people may well like the fact that they're going toward, they don't feel as though they identify with West Otago, and they make a submission.
Was there any pushback last time, Steve? Because there was a slight area last time of Waipahi that came in.
There was a couple, wasn't there?
Yeah,
We didn't get an objection, did we?
no, I don't think so.
There was I believe, an appeal from the Lawrence Tuapeka Community Board. There was a
Oh,
name
yeah,
change.
that one, yeah.
But not
Not-
from any mesh block moves or anything
Not
like
the
that.
mess, right. Do we actually have to let people know?
You legally have to make a public notice.
Yeah,
It's probably good practice to find another way to specifically let these people know. Because if they have a problem, you'd like to know about it. Some councils do letterbox drops. Each
Yeah.
council has a different way.
Can I ask the two locals, I'm not quite getting a line in the map specifically, whose farms, what, like, is there a thing that, it's gone down to there?
I can't specifically, I can share without actually going for drivers.
So Waipahi already went into West
Yeah.
Otago, so we're starting to get onto the other side of the main
Michelle raised a
road.
really good point, but like a lot of, I know, particularly with the doctor and things, like a lot of people from down there actually come our way.
Yeah,
they
West
do.
Otago Health, like we've got a very good facility there, and a lot of those people actually affiliate kind of with.
Already do.
yeah, I'm just trying to get the line in my head, so if
Yeah, I
it was
know.
already the main road or something, was that the demarcation line, or have we
No,
gone
so-
into the likes of Ian Roy's farm and that on the other side of the road, Waipahi, and coming back, because that is Clinton when you start. As you said to me, pretty much if you go, where Ian Roy, Hollander, those ones are, they're Clinton, they're well and truly Clinton, and if we've already stretched out like it looks on the map that we are there, but, well, what the hell do we do? We've got to feel the West Otago love with, make the numbers work.
Right, but if it is considered that this area very likely is part of the community ward, as you say,
Yeah.
the fact that we've had this conversation bolsters the argument as to why we may not propose to move that mesh block. We
Can
have looked at what we need to do.
Simon answer that question? Are you there, Simon?
It's not Simon's territory.
He's Clydeman.
Yeah, but
No.
no.
It's Clinton and West Otago, so you're up over there, but it's Michelle and John are the only two here that.
Mm.
And your experience being just, we're only 40 people away, is that going to be a deal breaker for the commission? If we left it as it was, and we're using old figures, we know that, we're using 6-year-old figures, we naturally know there's been a growth in West Otago. We're probably that far away, can we leave it as is and we'll hope for a green tick?
Yeah, I would suggest this is one of the most likely things that the commission will accept. We've got good arguments.
So just leave it as is then.
Can I ask for the two? When you cross, say, the railway line at Waipahi or when do you stand to West Otago? Where do you
It's
stand?
never the end of West Otago,
It's
Brian.
never Trump. Would you see it as that sort of railway line main road?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
kind of, like if we're going home, as soon as you turn off that main road, you're heading over
That's West
the
Otago.
Conical Hill, you're heading back into safer territory.
And then the other one will be the top of Conical Hill that will be the natural, like the regional boundary water flow. But that's way into West Otago, so well, it's getting tricky. Ellie?
I'd ask about schooling. Where's the cut-off for schooling? To going to
There's no cut-off.
no, I don't mean, the
Well, then
kind
we'll-
of isn't, but where's Clinton
The
school?
Kiwi and Clinton.
Where do, if your schooling tends to
Or
show a wee bit, doesn't it?
Used
Well,
to,
it's Clinton beat Waipahi will go to Gore.
yeah, used to, but not so
No,
much
they are.
anymore.
Sure.
Depending on what you want for your child to,
Yeah.
where you want to take your child.
Given how close it is, that's one we should leave. I don't want any more people signing the petition.
Yeah, I know you haven't been through the whole of them, but there's 14 in all of them. So we're just shifting the deck chairs on the boat, aren't we?
The last,
We haven't gone down to 9 or 11. Or,
the final two have 9, but you could have 5 councillors elected at large.
yeah,
If you wished to remain at 14, but that wouldn't affect the plus or minus 10% if you didn't have those at large.
Page 27.
Right, if we go to the next one and then the overall.
So option 3, this would be done without the boundary of West Otago. Instead of combining Bruce, Kaitangata, Mato. This would involve moving just over 300 people from Bruce to Kaitanga to Mato. That's what it would take to achieve compliance. Close up there of the exact area.
That would actually move me into the Kai ward.
That's a great one.
Can any of you say which farms are on that boundary line? Allison Road, where's that? Oh, yeah.
That's
So you're
where
coming back, you're going over the Crichton overhead bridge.
Call it,
Nancy Ellison,
yeah, James Ellison's
yeah,
father. He's on the side of the
on
road.
Ellison Road,
And is it Clark? Is Clark still up there?
yeah.
Up at Allison Road, but look where the red line is, Bruce. Is that more over the Crichton overhead bridge and you're heading out to your placement?
I'm just trying to see. I think it's certainly north of where I am. It would drag me back into
Yeah.
our ward, which would solve
Back through to
a
Milton.
lot of hassle.
Yeah, the back through to Milton.
Tokenmouth
That's
Road.
Milton right there, that's the
Yeah.
line.
Oh, no.
That's Milton there.
Because would it be right?
That's right out to
Blue line.
Clarksville Junction, is it? That blue line?
Well, Allison Road is blooming close, so it has to be.
Oh, it's a wee stretch of line.
All along State Highway 8.
Yeah.
Because I'd certainly say that, look, that road coming down from Lawrence, when you get, that's Milton. I'd see Crichton overhead bridges, that's when I'm heading off to Kai.
Yeah.
But we've got to do what we've got, we are fair heading into Milton.
Yeah, but you change the dynamic of the table, put young people around that are getting a,
They're
salary. They're not gonna worry about it.
No, oh, they've moved on.
They
Thank
get
goodness.
salary, they don't worry about what wards what.
One Tree Road,
I think that's a good fix.
One Tree Road is.
They'd get a better
very
rugby
local.
team.
Oh,
And
jeez.
they'd actually win a game or two.
Shut up.
Who did you say whose farm it was?
310 people.
Up One Tree Road is Barry Lockhart. Trying to think who else. And then, I mean, like Tokenmouth Road, that's.
It's Milton. It's Milton, well, I'm sure. Okay,
No,
right.
a lot of people.
This is the compromises we're going to face to maintain our 1989. Yeah, you wouldn't want to change it. What is it?
So
Up over the Clark.
2.5 lifetime.
we didn't really discuss option 2 with
Can I-
removing the boundary and having 4 councillors.
Ben was hoping to get to the end and then questions have clouded his trajectory.
Can I see, like, in that, there, and it's got Upstate Highway 8, but we haven't got what road goes off on the very top corner, what road that is there?
Yes.
That's way up, isn't it?
Yes. That's like almost at the start of the,
Yeah. The wiggle.
is that green part, is that, Mount Stewart?
Yep.
Yeah,
So you're going past Mount Stewart.
That's
Jesus,
right, yeah.
well
Fellaburn Road.
yes.
More of the
Ally.
cycle trail.
Well, what would happen if we combine Kai and Balclutha and put one more councillor in there, Max?
Well, you're not putting one more.
And you would, well, no, you wouldn't be putting one more. No, I know you wouldn't be, but you'd combine Kai and Balclutha to
And have 5
Balclutha
councillors.
ward.
I really want to look after people.
I mean, that, because that's almost your choice.
So again, you saying combine Kai and Balclutha,
Balclutha.
Yeah,
not Kai and Milton?
not Kai and Balclutha.
There's always been the community of interest.
So that-
There's
we-
those
that-
3 years when Milton and Kai were
That
combined.
wouldn't solve the problem.
Yes.
Bruce one, though, would it?
So Kaitanga, Mato and Balclutha are slightly underpopulated relative to the average.
Which is exaggerating.
So combining them, it may reduce the non-compliance, but it wouldn't fix it.
Yeah, it wouldn't fix it.
Wouldn't help with
What-
Bruce.
Whatever you
Option
do,
6.
Bruce is too big.
Okay.
I mean, no matter what conclusions you draw otherwise, according to the compliance related statements, Bruce's award is too
What
big.
about some of Bruce to the Lawrence to a Pekin?
Did that last
Right, so
time.
there are actually 2 mesh blocks in Bruce that could go into Lawrence to a Peka, but again, you are actually getting quite close to Milton. And there's really 2 mesh blocks that cover about 310 people. then you'd have to move. It likely would fix non-compliance in Bruce, and then you'd have Kaitanga.
With some major projects coming up in Milton, how's that going to affect
Community of.
community rate? There's some big projects coming up, and you're taking 310 people out for the swimming pool, for the library, for the Main Street upgrade.
That's about 6%, 7% of the population, isn't it, for them?
So option 4 would be to simply add a councillor to Bruce. That would require 2 mesh block changes in other wards. And what this represents is that Bruce is almost at the point where it could have another councillor. That's how big it is. Whether going to 15 councillors from 14 is a good idea or not is another. This option would require 2 mesh block changes and another councillor. That's 1 mesh block change it would need to happen. Just to a bigger include the valley. Between Catlins, I'll include the. Thought I'd throw this one in there just to shake things up a bit.
Yeah.
Well done. Option 5, amalgamate numerous wards. You're left with close to 4 wards. Balclutha, Milton, West Otago. We kept that one in because there were so many submitters from the community consultation from West Otago, and the rest elected from the remainder of the district. Obviously, this is quite a dramatic change for this council. I'll throw that in there to generate some discussion as well.
There being you've got the West Otago ward, so if you can go back in history, but the Lawrence Chuapeka County or the Chuapeka County actually encompassed West Otago, so why wouldn't you have the Chuapeka County, Lawrence and West Otago as one ward? Go back to the old rules, the old boundaries.
How do you think of that?
Back in 1989.
I could cope with that, except not a West Otago ward on its own, add it to the rural wards. So, because I don't believe you single out any one area, so I could cope with that with 6 rural, 1 Milton and 2 Balclutha.
Got 5 at large there, haven't you?
Then the 5 at large is optional. Leave them in or take them out. It wouldn't.
Well, then the Milton ward will be impacted with the big projects that are going on, wouldn't they?
It would change your whole rating.
Yeah, certainly would.
That would be the next problem.
Option 6, the same thing.
Ben, before you go on with that one, you've got 2 in Balclutha, 1 in Milton, 3, 5, 14. Oh no, that's that one. Sorry, that's 5. And the next one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Option 6.
Option 6,
Yeah.
very similar. This one also keeps Balclutha, Kaitangata, Mato, and you have to extend it a little bit as well.
Ben, that one adds up to 8, not 9 total. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yes, apologies.
So there's another one in there.
So at that point, you could keep 8, you could add at-large councillors. You could add 6 at-large councillors.
Is there any reason why you couldn't divide that rural ward down the middle into Waka, Clinton, Chuapeka, Clydevale, Chuapeka, put 3 lines through there, which is what we've got now? Well, it's different than what we've got now, but it's with the lesser numbers. You've got 3, 4, 5. You've got 2 in the rural ward, right?
1,500 people, yeah.
And you've got 8.
Yeah.
You've got 8 councillors. If you added 2 more in, you'd have 12 councillors in total. And that would be similar to what we've got now. You'd have 1 in Catlins, 1 in Clinton, 1 in Clydevale, 1 in Chuapeka. That would give you 12 councillors.
And if the population's worked out, then then I could look into that. if you like.
That reduces us from 14 to 12. Gives us a wee, down a wee bit.
Pretty keen to get rid of those 50 pages a week, aren't
district is
If you go,
Pretty keen to get rid of those 50 pages.
well, I was thinking if you went to Central Otago, that would be a bloody.
Yeah. Hey, I tell you what, I actually think about it often too.
As part of, I'm still probably a question for Steve, but as part of this discussion, how will it affect our rating implications? And that, having just done a long-term plan consultation, where some of these communities.
So the Bruce Ward stays the same, which is where the most of the projects are, but there will be, moving forward sooner or later, it'll make a change, all right?
But the Bruce Ward mightn't actually, will it stay the same in numbers?
Yeah, 4,700 for option 6 and it stays quo.
You have the annual plan to, because by the time you get to the annual plan decision process, you will have the structure locked in.
Yep.
So it works in a timing sense, it works well because you can apply whatever you're applying. But what you are looking at is correct. You're wanting to be careful around, where is the big capital payback projects being held against? One of those options was going to reduce the Bruce Ward to half of the people. Well, that would have had a major impact on, those things, right? You've got to be careful about where is those major capitals occurring within those. Rural water you don't worry about because that's a different way of thinking it, but clearly the major projects that you were funded. So if you were thinking around, let's say the Catlin's project or other bits and pieces, how big a deal is that? There's other projects within some of those other groupings potentially. I mean, Clydevale, if Councillor McAtamney was here, we might say, well, actually, we don't have too many projects that's being funded, and if we get lumped in, we're helping to pay. But that would be the consequence. It's a more minor consequence than it would be if you have the number of Bruce things or you have the number of Balclutha people in that sense. Does have an impact for if you're merging Balclutha with Kaitangata, because there's more capital in Balclutha and debt associated with that. So but we did that.
They're already on these Kai's Stirling.
So the community of interest, yes, we did that anyway.
So then it makes it hard to, because we're already predetermined, makes it hard to even go through this process all up.
No, you are giving consideration to it. So, the idea is that your eyes are open when you're considering the consequences. What we're trying to say is that, just off the top of my head, that option 6 in there doesn't seem to be, hugely significant in terms of the community's interest in how we've done things relative to some of the other options that might have been there as a result, right? So, and that's all you have to think about. Like, okay, there will be some, right, but it's not hugely significant that it would be if you were doing something else like halving the Bruce numbers.
John.
Just when I look at options 5 and 6, and I look at you've got the massive rural ward in the middle with 2 representatives, and the amount of people they would represent as far as water schemes go, we're trying to lower the workload on people with what's in front of us with water in the next few years. There'd be a fair workload on them. As far as the West Otago ward goes, it's something that pops up from time to time in conversation. People say, why are we in Balclutha? Why are we in Clutha anyway? Why? And you explain to them because of the watershed and it's the way the water flows and ORC and that. And like, don't take this the wrong way, but there's a number of times when we sit here and we're referred to as sort of like, oh, that's West Otago. Oh, you've got your gravel roads. Oh, you've got your Congress land. If we're identified, if there's everyone else and West Otago, that will only exaggerate it. And I'm saying, well, you often refer to, oh, that's West Otago. Oh, that's, there's times when it's more than just in jest too. So I wouldn't be keen on seeing us and then the whole of Clutha district and West Otago attacked on the side.
So that would go back to one big rural ward.
I'm not keen on that either.
3 councils.
I agree, but you don't want West Otago.
Oh, it's sort of, we're going to, there's times when it's going to exaggerate what already exists.
If it ever came to a vote.
Right.
Question for Ben, Your Worship. Ben, so the Electoral Commission, do they actually factor in Well, we've got the third largest water infrastructure, third largest roading structure and all that in the whole of New Zealand. Do they not consider that when it comes to these implications?
They do.
They do?
It's a pretty thorough review that they'll do. And they'll take on board your point of view. There are specific points that bolster your arguments. They will consider those as well. They won't do it purely independently.
The commission didn't come out and say, for example, hey, you need to cut the number of councillors. They
They did address.
I appreciate that.
Their point of view on the number of councillors was, it is a little bit higher than other councils of a similar size, but it's been that way for a long time. There's no groundswell coming out of the submissions to suggest it should be lower, and in that case, they'll defer to council's point of view, which is that 14 is the right number.
Bruce?
I know it hasn't been put there as an option, but I've really been thinking about the whole lot at large, and I know it's awkward, but I think it'd simplify a lot of that as well. Taking away the limit, chopping boundaries.
50% of your voting power is in Milton and Balclutha.
Yeah, but you still only get 14 votes each. If you had 14 councillors.
With the number, is it right that, because people say, oh, that would mean that Balclutha would get all, but once you've used your vote up, everyone gets, in other areas, does it work out that, that meant that everyone in Balclutha got the vote, or no, they exhausted their vote when they got to 4 councillors or whatever, like they always would have, and everyone sort of gets to go. I don't know what.
You can vote for as many vacancies as there are. So if there are 14 vacancies.
I mean in the outcome. I can't work out if everyone's doing it, does that mean Balclutha swamps West Otago and they get nothing? Because we don't want that. Or does it mean, I can't work out, does it mean that, Balclutha's going to get its share and West Otago's going to get its share? No.
You could well end up with 14.
Because it depends, and it also depends on your nominations. I mean, some of the outlying areas might actually even put a nomination in. I don't say in the first time round, but as time went on, they could get very complacent. So, when you're at large, I actually wouldn't support at large. At all. I would support a broken down.
I think if there's any advantage, it's only going to be with the Bruce Milton ward, because they're the only ones that are above. You've still got 1,300 voters or ratepayers in Kai, and you've got 1,300 in Catlin's area or something. So there's potentially, they're going to vote for you or whatever. If there's any advantage, it's that it'll be with the ward that is above, the compliance is above rather than below. You don't get extra votes. Like, if you've got all the people inclusive voted for the same people, they'd still only get 1,300 votes each maximum.
I would love to, I think, I'm damn sure I would try and pick the best people, and I couldn't give a damn where they live. I don't know whether that's what, we're here, we're immersed in it, but if there's going to be any hope, I love that, but is it a step too far for anyone to contemplate?
29 councillors.
I'd throw it out there, 7 or 9.
How do we work our way towards what will be your one preference?
Well, I think we've gone down a long road with our community plans. And we haven't implemented all those, identified those, those plans. We haven't, since I've been, I don't know, it's too big. I mean, this guy's, if you've got to go away with it, we're going to be going for, I think we're going to end up in status quo, and we're going to do some reachings on a couple, maybe a number around Kaya. That's what I'm thinking.
Option 3.
Because realistically,
leave West Otago the way it is and move the Kai Balclutha one.
Keep in mind, you don't have to move all of these people. This is what it would take to make it compliant. You could have that boundary in a different place to offset some of the non-compliance, but not make it fully compliant. I think there's 6 mesh blocks in this affected area. We'd have to work out which of those 6 you wanted to move, if not all of them. It would help the argument as to why we're going forward with a non-compliant.
Given how close that line now comes to actual Milton itself,
That's
in 6 years' time,
Yeah.
you could end up with Milton there in a wee move like it's, at some point in time, because Milton, that area is growing.
Oh, yeah.
So that, all I'm saying is that in 6 or 12 years' time, you could be moving the line past Milton itself, the main town in that ward.
I think we're already there, John.
But we're not at that point now.
Where that line goes, that's definitely Milton.
Yeah,
It's well bitten into it.
yes. Well,
I think the way, as you said the way Milton's growing, so does that not open it up that you maybe retain Milton as the township itself as a ward and then North Bruce or whatever?
no.
But rather than start chopping and changing, blah, 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 you're creating another ward where the population growth is going to be,
No.
which is why Holder and North and Milton.
So that would be another councillor.
Yeah, but maybe you chop one of the others out. Where's the target?
We're already saying that the 1989 system, the world's moved on. It has. We're to put that line in there and call that a community of interest.
No.
So,
I don't think that's right. Really don't.
Yeah, I don't see an option because Bruce is over and Kai's under. It's no use moving him anywhere else.
Well, see, either put a new line or take the line away.
Yeah.
2 options.
and if we're going to take that line away, we can take all lines away.
Sorry?
If we're going to take that line away, we can take all lines
No,
away.
because everything else is compliant.
So just for your information, so Milton, June 23 was 2,224 people, approximately half, or just under half of the Bruce ward.
Milton was,
Says about 2,240, according to June 23 census.
and that's just Milton.
That's just Milton, which is just under half.
Yeah.
So I mean, the suggestion that Councillor Graham was saying was create a Milton town ward.
Does that include the prison, Steve?
Sorry?
Does that include the prison population? The Milton Township? Does that include that?
They don't
No,
get,
I've just Googled the census.
I don't think they get to vote.
It doesn't matter. Are they they're using infrastructure.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they did go.
I'm just using it to assist, like the suggestion was, I mean, like, can you create another ward and you have a greater Bruce ward or something like that. And you're dealing with the movement based on that, rather than shift the boundaries, arbitrarily between Gaetano and Bruce. But I'm just saying that's the outcome of it. In terms of
Which
impacts,
say 2-2.
it's about 2-2. In terms of like,
Two,
I don't think we should get confused too much about areas, community areas, because they can be combinations. So, you can still retain effectively the Milton and Bruce community area of interest for the things. You don't have to separate that out into Milton. But I don't know, I'm just saying.
Option
That was a question.
4, can I have a look at the option 4 again, please? That's not moving,
This is if you wanted to leave Bruce as it is,
yeah.
it needs another councillor. It's too big.
But,
Saying is to be, we
So-
don't want to go to 50.
so
Yeah.
Steve, 2-2, but 2-2 with 2 councillors is 1,100, isn't it?
Oh, I wasn't trying to work out what the councillors would be. I was just saying that, what does that mean in relation to the wards? It still doesn't make any difference. It would still be 15. It would still be.
Yeah, 14 count.
It would still be, an additional councillor, which is what the answer was to the Bruce side of things. If you don't touch the mesh blocks, it was going to do that. But I'm not sure whether it gives you any opportunity of not touching the Kai Bruce mesh blocks by creating another suite within the township. It might give you options to do that.
By doing what, Steve, sorry?
But the problem is with Kaitangata then, in the option, isn't it, is that Kaitangata also has a problem. Because the status quo for them was being underrepresented.
Yeah.
So, like,
But that number
that's the conundrum, is that Kai's underrepresented and Bruce is overrepresented.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and address the Kai bit, just as you've got to try and address the Bruce bit. So creating the additional one in Milton doesn't help the Kai problem.
And they would have both grown since these figures came to, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
It would be fair to say that Kai's population would be higher than 2018.
Yeah, well, how many new houses?
It also means that
Exactly.
the Bruce ward would be less compliant.
Yeah,
That's
it'll
right.
be
And I
more.
think that would be the case. I think you'd find the numbers from that are actually on the ground now.
Yeah, there's
There's
more.
growth coming out of the Bruce
The
ward.
point is, we can't go by what the numbers that are now. We've got to go by those other
Okay.
numbers.
Back then.
Geez.
See what would happen if you shifted the Tuapeka boundary with the Bruce, because at the moment it's at Round Hill, isn't it? What happens if you take it to like the Mount Stewart River
It had to be moved last time.
to take some of the heat off the Bruce guys?
Yeah.
It's definitely an opportunity. I think that's
It's still.
an option.
Should we not get in there, are we?
Because Lawrence is minus 8.84, which is how many people?
You had up before what you could do if Milton went into the Lawrence area, didn't you? You had
224, a lot of people.
No, I don't think
No.
we're going that way.
No.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't one to go.
Yeah.
So are you talking about moving part of Bruce into
In terms of
Lawrence to a
Tuapeka, yeah.
Yeah.
We have to go by the mesh block boundaries. So we can't
Yeah.
draw a boundary wherever we want. There are 2 mesh blocks in Bruce that line up with Lawrence to a ticket.
Yeah,
You could move them. It wouldn't quite bring them down to where it would need to do it.
I wouldn't quite get
Not
Bruce.
quite. I mean, it would
That
help.
would bring Lawrence
But
up.
it would,
It would bring Lawrence up and it would bring
1200.
down.
And it would mean less from Bruce ward
But-
to Kai.
You could, yes, you could put a,
Correct.
yes, you could
You
juggle.
can still make it an even more minor boundary change.
Yeah.
Bruce and Kai.
As long as you drag Lovers flat into.
That's
Kai.
kind of, that's what I'd look at.
so how many people is 8.84%, I asked?
Calculator.
George calculator.
We've got it.
Which in the current arrangements,
Yeah.
Yes, if we moved some up to Lawrence, how many would that need to be?
we could move 200 and it wouldn't quite be enough. We have to move, I think it's about 230 or 240.
And then do the 200 to Lawrence and do, say, a mesh block down to
And say
Kaitangata,
60, for example.
and that, would that help? Or what
Yeah, I'd
happens,
have to run the numbers, but it could work.
or even, what about 2 mesh blocks down to Kai?
It's got to be more compliant.
Yeah, but I mean, there must be room to juggle between the two that way.
Yeah.
Well, you still got to, as long as you've got to get what's going into Kaitangata though, because you're minus 13%.
Well, that's got to be worked out whether we'd have to take 1 or 2 mesh blocks.
Yeah, I think it would have to be two or three.
Say, we'll say 2 to Kai, a couple to Lawrence, and we might have the numbers.
Could
So,
we go, could we go the other way
Exclude the valley.
and
We're just getting it sorted.
put some of Kai into the Bruce ward, increase the Bruce ward to 4 councillors. Move boundaries somewhere between Kai and Belclutha ward. So Belclutha ward goes down to 3 councillors. And Kai maintains 1.
Yeah, that'll work.
Don't breathe. So, we know what you're doing, Bruce. But we'll
Yeah,
get
that'll
around it.
work.
Let's just go to large, I would say.
Well, no, they'll say
I
it first.
don't agree with that.
Yeah.
There's no way, you think you wouldn't get one Belclutha objecting to that?
To keep Kai,
We might as
suck
well
up
just go
Stirling
large.
into Kai.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Which I totally agree with, but
Suck Kai towards Stirling. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, take some more from what's
It does
presently
seem
Kai
to lean more
Matter
towards
Yeah.
the large though, doesn't
into
it?
Bruce, so we have four councillors for Bruce ward,
Yeah,
1 for Kai,
yeah.
3 for the Belclutha ward.
Yeah.
Everything else stays the same. You're swapping the 3 and 4 around.
You could
Yeah.
possibly end up doing it that way with having a Bruce Ward council living in Milton then.
You know that it would never swing, and where's the Belcluta ones? Have they got a voice?
No, I absolutely wouldn't agree to that.
What's that?
Why would the largest town do that?
Yeah, but
Why not?
because the growth is happening actually in the Bruce Ward, isn't it?
That can be,
Large
looked
growth.
Not in
at-
the largest town.
that can be
The
looked
growth
at in
is
the
in the
next
Bruce Ward, not the
review.
largest town.
Yeah,
There
but
goes
the
your
numbers are
argument there,
close.
your worship.
Currently,
This is-
4-7.
This is the problem, because all we're doing is moving deck chairs around. We're not solving any problem.
You have to move them though.
Yeah.
Ellie?
I'd like to move it along.
Oh, she's seen them in the
Rather than
line.
She's
She's not real protective, isn't she?
I really think the simple way would be to do a couple from Milton to Lawrence.
Couple, it's more than a couple.
It's only two.
A couple of mesh blocks.
Two mesh
Oh,
blocks
sorry.
and a couple of mesh blocks down to Kai, and I honestly believe it would be the easiest way of keeping it as it is. And if you didn't want to go to that option, well,
Consider it large.
consider it large.
But you can't take any more of Lawrence to Peter.
No, they're not.
They're not taking
That's
it.
going.
Adding out.
Oh, you're gonna go.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind.
So where are the
Yeah.
mesh blocks?
They run around about down. 200 people or so in the Bruce Ward that could be moved into Lawrence to a bit.
Yeah.
Now, Lawrence to a bit is already minus 6.
Is that up round Waipori? Is that what we're pointing at there with all that green? Is that Waipori?
Yeah, it's more on the other side of the Mahinarangi Road towards the Mungatua side, in that corner there.
Hmm.
It kind of makes sense.
So they still need to move a little bit from Bruce.
Yep,
to
that-
Protect.
And that would work.
Now, there are about 6 mesh blocks here, and they all start pointing toward Milton.
Yeah.
So we'd have to be careful about which mesh
Yeah,
blocks.
no, that's good.
you look
So
at.
have you got a map of the mesh
I
blocks?
do, yes. It's on paper though.
Okay.
It's all right, we can get it photocopied. and
Yeah,
pass it
yeah,
all around.
absolutely.
We can do that.
Because I am getting
I could even,
Jordan, get a, no, I'll.
That's protective we all are.
Ask a question.
yeah.
I think, well, can you explain to us?
I think it's.
Ben, can you explain how mesh blocks work?
It's the
Is it the amount of people?
smallest area that statistics.
I think the problem
With
Yeah.
they're relatively small.
I can see the here, other
Look at Keep to follow roads.
Toko Grove.
So we're just in a sort of mini adjournment, but we're still live streaming, it's all part of the workshop still. Be aware. While we're waiting. So Ben, you think that if we give you that feedback, you can do do you want sort of colour markers or something?
What am I saying?
Yeah, no, they're trying to get some out.
Yes, not that I can do it, but we'll see.
They're trying to take some out.
No, we might be going till
We
12:15.
still live,
You know what I mean? Like, that's when
Yes, that's a pseudo adjournment. I'll send you off to talk in your own group.
We might have to remove the.
You'll just have to talk loudly because we're all old. It'll be a shame if we actually change something around here.
Your worship, are we continuing this?
We're just doing a slight adjournment for the photocopier, so you each get a mental in front of yourself. So we're still live. As I said, Ali, we're coming into wee groups, but you have to talk loudly because we're all old. Imagine if a young one was around here.
As a motion.
Female.
We are.
Julius, can we make it a duet? Might as well,
Actually,
So Ben's just trying to translate what was suggested.
You could get
And there's still a possibility of a smaller number of councillors, but not having councillors at large and perhaps totally altering those communities of interest.
Right?
Yeah. But that's an aside. It's a bit difficult here from a hotel room, but yeah.
Have you got a sort of an overview of what that would look like, Simon?
No, because that would be a whole other, you'd have to be tweaking the different boundaries and things here.
So hypothetically.
So we did look at one option.
If you were, a simple preference of mine was actually 9 councillors, 2 Balclutha, 1 Milton, 1 West Otago, and 5 rural councillors.
It sounds like that was option
Option 7.
Hybrid option 7, Simon?
That was 9.
No, so 9 councillors.
Yeah, a hybrid option 7.
Okay, I haven't got that paper.
Yeah, nor have I actually when I look at it. It came up on the screen.
That's
It was moved to the
page 29.
So that option would have a Milton ward, Balclutha ward, West Otago, either or not, and the rest of the councillors elected from the rest of the district.
Yeah, I haven't got that on my workshop paper for
So
today,
that's-
but yeah.
Option 7, you're saying, is it?
But not West
Oh, yeah, I
Otago.
haven't seen option 7, I haven't got that paper, yeah.
Page
Yeah, no, it
27.
sounds very similar to,
Can you see?
yeah, that sounds very similar to what I.
No, but I'm holding this up. Can you see?
Yeah, it's not pretty, it's not clear, no.
Right.
I'm not worried.
Becky might flick something through to you, Bruce. Simon.
This document here is what we've got.
I'll email it to you.
No, it's the presentation.
Yeah,
Where
that's right,
they
that's
were
right.
looking to bring other things. 'Cause
So
the-
Becky's going to email it to you, Simon. You'll have it in a minute. And it's on page 27. Bruce.
From what I can see, I can't agree with this, that mesh block of 140 going to Lawrence to Pekin, because that's the back of Lake Waihoa, and there's quite a substantial development around there. They definitely don't see themselves, that's not their community of interest at all.
No.
They're heading to Milton, or to Leeds actually.
It'll be well led.
Oh, that's not a community.
So that's not gonna work, and even that 60 from just to the bottom left of that, that's a fair area of that's pretty close to Milton itself too,
Would just about include you, wouldn't it?
not far away.
It's a geographic.
I could give you.
Unfortunately, Bruce, no matter what we do, we're going to get those compromises, aren't we?
Well, that's
the
pretty
problem
major
with
that.
Yes.
holding on to 1989. Ally.
Can I go back to option 7? And is it Milton 2?
Milton 1, Balclutha 2.
Why wouldn't we do that? Balclutha 2, Milton 2, and rural 5?
So
Because the numbers, yeah.
Would that,
the population here of Milton and Balclutha makes it possible to have 2 from Balclutha and 1 from Milton. If you go to 2 from Milton, those councils are representing fewer people, quite a bit fewer than councillors from Balclutha.
so we could do 2, 1, and 6 rural, not Hill or West Otago, just make 6 rural and 2 and a 1.
It's still 9 in total.
I'd go with that.
Any other thoughts around the room?
Yeah.
No.
Bruce.
So there seems to be a lot of whatever. If we left it the way it is and the non-compliance, and then it goes away to your board, and then they make the decision,
They do.
sounds the easiest way to me.
I don't want to see an outside group without, we're right down to the
We
knowledge
know.
of saying whose farm and what road.
Yeah.
When I, Yeah, that helicopter aspiration of when are we actually going to move away from 1989 and become a district? I believe that if I was in a rural ward and you would, yeah, no, I don't really care whether you come from West Target or not. You're the best guy. I'm going to vote for you. If you can still have the passion and the I'm from here and you're from there, but actually we're a district. And at 9 councillors, I know that the number of times Steve and I start going, we're going to do 3 workshops, we've got the council man, we've got this and that, and I'm thinking, holy hell. There's times of the year where it's thick end of a full-time job, and I know fine well that the recompense isn't there. And you've got to admit it, there has been some times where I've had pushback of, hey, it's just getting a bit too much then. I've definitely had it from councillors in the last month, but I can't hold my daytime job and my council job. I have. Have we got the courage to actually move to a district-wide setup for the future, or are we going to keep on moving the deck chairs?
I'll move it for discuss, yeah, I will, and if I don't get a seconder and some
I'll second
discussion.
Can't move. We can't move.
We're going to make it. We've got to make
Well,
a preferred
what-
option. So we're going to have
what you tell us is what we write into the paper that comes to you for adoption, which then has to be decided. So, you know, like at the end of the day, we wouldn't want to, and we have to be careful because we haven't got all councillors, but we wouldn't want to get Ben and the team and ourselves to write everything up for the full proposal as per the direction of the majority of people here, and then get it to the adoption stage to go out fully and you decide against it after all that work that's been done. So whilst you can, and whilst you don't resolve, we do like you to try and give us the general majority steer that you will accept.
it's a tight call.
Yes.
And no matter what, it's going to be a tight call. Then I'm looking at who's not here and thinking, but we can't think that. John.
So just teasing that out a little bit more, people proposing that, where does that leave community boards?
That's still stuck.
Doesn't touch.
Yes. So, well, right, so they still stay there, and then how does that fit for like sort of targeted rates that we've had in the past, like the West Target Health Centre, likes of Project Bruce, all of a sudden you're actually still identifying communities.
So the communities of interest don't have to change. So, because if you went all that large, the same would be the problem. They've still got communities of interest,
That's
we've
what
got
we're talking
targeted
about,
rates. They don't have to change. But that's a whole different story that you would be going through a whole different process for. And
It just seems strange if we change the representation, like you still got the communities of interest. Why don't we just have communities of interest represented by council?
well, they're currently not the same now. They're not exactly the same as wards, are they?
Well,
No, I
and through our whole Our Place thing, that's exactly what we did do. We identified what each community wanted, and that's that community, and we've got them identified now.
We've got our Clutha, Stirling, Kaitanga, the Kaka Point. There's 3 because Waka, Kai, Clutha, there's a bit of Clydevale in there as well. I wouldn't be at all surprised with Clydevale. So we're already doing a community of interest that doesn't reflect the ward rating.
Look, I'm happy to put out the consultation, but I wouldn't be on something like that.
So can you put the 2 options out to consultation, or do we have to go with one option?
Only one option can be resolved at the meeting.
So
I'm
looking at this map, where would it go on this map if some of the Bruce ward was put into the Kai ward?
Well, they've already done that as part of the
That's what we've
option.
done.
Where's the option that's got that? That's sitting there.
You're talking about this
Was.
specific one?
Yeah,
So 85% of people said stay at wards, and over 80% said keep it the same. We're
you
talking
just
about
haven't
changes.
got that.
Yeah.
This option doesn't have
No.
anyone moving from Bruce to Carr.
Yes.
Only got 2 measurements moving from Bruce to Morris.
Yes, so I was asking what area would move from Bruce to Kai?
So this option, nothing.
Yeah.
This is at large, but what you're meaning on that old
Well,
one
we're
would
checking
be
the
right
records,
up
just
round,
change it the way it is.
up around the turn off the
15,
line.
80% of people.
Option 3 was the move parts of Bruce to Kai.
And that's going right up almost to Milton John.
I thought you had different measure
John's-
blocks that you hadn't taken into.
John's concern there is about 85% of the submitters, but there's only 56 submitters out of a population base of 18,000.
They would have changed.
So I can't see that really being a great guide at the moment for our positions, but interestingly enough, though, you're saying, like we touched on the community plans, which is your communities of interest. So they're all still there in the bigger scheme of things and at large. So there won't be any real impact there, is there? So there's nothing. There's no impact there at the communities of interest. And that's the biggest thing, is that communities identify to their community plans. So it does create debate for at large.
And I would love, it's never been challenged, the concept has never been put out there. We've never quite been able to cut the apron strings. If we put it out there and it got absolutely knocked down, at least we tried.
Well, you know.
We tried. John.
I'll just respond to 3.4% of people submitted to our long-term plan. 660 out of 18,000. When do we listen to people then?
Yeah.
If we're saying 57 is not enough, when do we listen to people?
So
Well,
it always goes back to that thing, John, that it's not a vote, it's the credence and the breadth and the credence of argument. So 5 people could have 5 different arguments that are magnificent, and 100 people could tick a box, 1 to 5. Then go out and do your other due diligence. So it's not that linear line of, oh God, that's it, all those in favour. Because that's part of the due diligence, but it's not the be all and end all.
So there wasn't a different area of the mesh block that wasn't taken into Kai. You had taken it in under option 3. That was all the mesh blocks.
Option 3 moves.
Yeah, and that was only those mesh blocks there.
Wait.
I was just going to say to Councillor Martin, that you'd be quite happy if we went out at large, that Lawrence might lose its voice. Because I've seen since I've been here, with the ward, everyone has got their bringing to the table from the area. We went out at large, you could get, however number we go with, or from Balclutha for argument's sake. So that means Lawrence, Waika, West Otago do not have a voice as such to the table. And that's what I've seen since I've been here, the passion that comes from the table, from the wards, from each ward. If it goes at large, you could have everyone from Balclutha or from Waika. They're just going to be pointing from Balclutha or Waika's opinion.
I think you'll find, though, in response to that question, though, those communities of concern, well, they're really going to put their hands up and increase the voting turnout to have who they want there to represent them, because
we're having trouble getting people to submit.
Councillor, just if you're talking about option 7, we shouldn't use the word at large, because that's not what's proposed. Option 7, unless you add more councillors at large, talks about 9 councillors. It talks about 2 from Balclutha, so it locks Balclutha. 1 from Milton, it locks Milton, so you don't get capture from those urban areas. And then it talks about a rural ward and whether you add at West Otago or not. You know, that's rural just by itself, including West Otago, would be 6 people. So you'd be saying the rural voice would be 6 councillors, or the rural provincial part of the district, 6 councillors, which could all come from Owaka or whatever, you know, under the way that works. But that's not the same as the argument you talked about at large. So it does lock in some of that stuff and reduces that risk.
It stops Balclutha and Milton being able to swamp the process.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It means only 2 from Balclutha get in and only 1 from the Milton.
does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And would it be fair to say that a Kaitankata or a Waka identifies themselves as an urban or a rural?
I guess.
So therefore you get the rural block, so you get what it is. It's, yeah.
As a Balclutha, I could identify myself as a rural.
Well, I do, but you don't. So.
But I know. But
And everyone around that little wee.
And stand as a rural, even though I'm based in Balclutha.
Doesn't stop anybody from, well, yes, but
Yes.
it's the same from.
But it still does not stop it still does not stop the voter, the ratepayer, from having a say.
And not only that, we know that the drop off, that if we keep going the same, we're going to keep on getting it dropped off. We're going to keep on saying what we're saying. This will put a bomb under things. And if it gets voted down, well, we did our duty to try and evolve our district into a more modern fit for purpose. And if the, yeah, you imagine, like you said, Jock, if Lawrence didn't get a vote, in 3 years' time, there'll be a few years pushing the very best candidate. Come on, we're going to get in, we're going to get stuck into this. And there'll be a bit of enthusiasm and oomph coming back in.
There's 4 people not here. And so if we give an idea and they're going to come along with a completely different idea and it only takes a few to go with them, and then that throws the option out that we've decided.
Well, it would.
That's the same whatever we do.
Yeah, it would though if you got a feeling that you got 75% plus or more here in the room for the option you want, then you should be relatively confident that you can carry that forward. If you have an option where basically it takes a casting vote for a direction, I'd be saying to you that's not going to work because I have no confidence that it's going to survive in the thing. So unless you test it and say, well, what does the room, where do you want to sit?
And Anne's told me we're going to be at lunch in 1 minute. Not that that will make a difference, but I will push it on. It's only a straw poll indication what Ali said. It shows the split.
Consultation document is what we're saying.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
Only to go to consultation.
Yeah, so there'd be the status quo and consultation, and consultation in this.
No, Ali's suggesting number 7.
Yeah, but Ben just got to say how you have to show it.
Yeah, there would be a public notice that goes up, this is after the resolution. Community members could then make a formal submission on the proposal. Nothing goes ahead until the submission process is complete, and then council can further deliberate.
Ben, just for John's purposes, does the proposal have to show the status quo?
Yeah, absolutely.
For good practice, you do show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you're going to give people, they're going to have an option.
I see what you mean, yes.
It won't be a formal option, councillor, will it? But it'll show the proposal versus the status quo. So at least they'll have that, and they can still say they're unhappy with it.
And then the next part of the process is if one person says, I don't like that to the commissioners, it gets thrown into their hands and we don't even get a say.
First there is the submission process.
Yeah.
So once the submissions are all received,
Yeah.
depending on how many there are, they can be heard.
We make a decision.
Then you have a.
There is an appeal, right? So it's that bit that we can get. So we still have one more judder in the process to stop this.
In your worship, so Ben, council could go out with the proposal for option 7 or modified option 7. Go through a process of decision making and change their mind. It doesn't have to be option 7, right? It could be anything else as a result of that, and then publish their result, and then you have the objection. So you're not locked in.
Would certainly get the discussion.
So it's not quite how we might do it with 3 options, councillor, that we would do for LTP. You're sort of limited by 1 option plus referring station, but you do have the ability to change your minds from that option and decide anything else at your final point. So you do have a choice.
So can I, if we push it to have a straw poll, but if there's not a strong support on the straw poll, saying there's so many away and the fragility that puts, we're going to go back. So everyone knows that unless it's clear cut, we're going back for further discussion.
Is Simon allowed to vote?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Simon, you hearing this? So Ali's proposing option 7. Have you got option 7
No,
yet?
he hasn't.
No, but
I've emailed it to him.
Yeah,
Oh, have you got it?
I've got option 7, I've got the PowerPoint, it's exactly as what I was thinking anyway.
Yeah, right. So straw poll.
Sorry, but there was a modified, wasn't it? Was
Well,
the
it's
question
modified.
was?
Modified option 7 because rural ward would be 6, take out West Otago ward and add it just to the rural ward. So it'd be 2, 1 and 6 for the rural ward.
Because as I understand it, we were listening to John and Michelle about being, like, if they wanted to stay exactly
Well,
as it is, you would
And so
say.
none for West Otago.
Well, why should one?
Yeah, why should one?
will be
I would be quite happy as a rural voter to vote if West Otago's the best person.
I would be split.
Right. So can we have a show of hands, please, who supports it? And Simon, not enough.
I also support it.
Yeah, we still ain't got the.
With the petition, I didn't quite hear that West Otago still retains a ward.
No.
We got blown away anyway, Simon, so we're moving on.
No, it was West Otago added into the rural, Simon.
No, it's been blown away, so we're moving on. Who's got the next idea? Bruce.
The one we have, I'll have to see what option we take cash blocks from Bruce and put them in Clyde. And
That's
then
three.
the boundary ends up at Ellison Road, and which.
Option
remind
three.
you that The existing boundary now is levels flat, so it's not that far from Mason Road.
So, option 3.
I'll go.
Okay, then straw poll to see whether option 3 is the one. You up with that, Simon? Simon? Yep, done. Okay, so have a show of hands for option 3. All those in favour, please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Jesus.
Yeah.
It won't matter.
You got a different one,
It
Bruce,
won't
with all
matter,
your
Dane.
adding?
You're too close to 50-50 to be able to, there's no ability for us with any confidence to put any option in. So we need an option that people are confident that we can generally by consensus agree that
Well,
we
we
can
change,
put down.
making
Bruce.
changes for change's sake, or?
No, for legal sake, we've got no choice.
With your additions,
well-
have you got a different option?
No, we're deliberating here.
What are we going to now?
We can actually.
We've
stick
done
with
option
status quo.
7, we've done option 3, we didn't get enough for both.
Option 6 is
Oh,
looking
we've got
good.
What's option 6, Kevin?
So status quo, if we went with status quo, and you guys went away and you then decided, no, you're gonna change it. That was what the public would be consulting on, and what you guys changed, isn't it? We said status quo. Then you guys override that and say, no, we are gonna make changes.
You mean the commission?
With the commission.
Yeah.
That's actually what you would decide as a commission is actually what was consulted on the public.
So I'm not part of the commission, by the way. So we put out an initial proposal,
Yeah.
submissions come in, you either change it or you stick with what you want, final proposal.
Yeah.
Because it's not compliant, it will go to the commission.
Yeah.
The commission will make a determination based on their review.
So you can consult the public and then the commission is the override.
One person.
If you decide to put forward a non-compliant proposal, which is a status quo.
Yep.
That's my understanding. That's one example that it's automatically going to be the case that the commission will.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't need an objection or
Okay.
appeal.
And the commission will lean heavily on the community feedback. Those 56 responses that have already been received, plus any submissions that are received.
But it's also right that the commissioner can then put the scope to wherever they want it. You go there, they can go to there.
I'd still have to use the mesh.
Hold on, Gary, can I please have that? That once the commissioners have it in their final hands, they could come back with anything. They would have to have reason for it.
They would, the boards would still have to follow the mesh block boundaries. But it's very likely that they would make minor changes because that's what the community like the status quo.
So what's our next? Does anyone have the epiphany moment to throw in another option out?
For all that.
So if you haven't got it, then you
Haven't
might
got
end
it.
up
Well, there's people that
going.
haven't voted for either option, so what's there? Because it's
Well, the only other thing is to go out with the existing situation not changed.
Yep.
Highlighting that it's non-compliant,
Yep.
right? And we just go out for consultation on that. You're still going to have to make a decision next time as well, but that's fine.
Well, what about option 7 without taking West Otago out?
Well, put that up, would you, Michelle?
Yeah, took it out. Okay.
Because we're going to get absolutely no discussion with the status quo. We'll get no feedback, no nothing, and we'll sleepwalk on see you in 6 years.
So option 7 as is.
Yeah.
Because you took West Otago out.
Okay.
We gets us down to 9, that's a good idea.
Simon, are you clear what Michelle's talking about?
So,
Yeah, I had that, yep, as I suggested,
Yeah.
I would be in favour of that.
So we're going to have another straw poll for option 7 as it sits up there. Everyone ready to vote? We're not going to have a double kickstart at it like before. Jock, are you ready to vote? Okay, everyone put their hand up.
Before we go with that one, with the rural wards there, rather than having them spread over the whole district, could they not be at least put, it would needs to go and look at where the mesh blocks lie, but at least put some boundaries so there are some communities of, we have a
Communities.
sort of communities of interest. There might be a sort of, I don't know.
3 north, 2 south or something.
5 councillors, I'm just giving a, bit of a, just could be divided up.
So that we have 2 north and 3 south, or 3 north, 2 south?
Or it could be even, starting out there.
One from Kine, one from Wacker.
No.
But
That's just confusing to me. As I say, I'm happy to vote for John and Michelle, or if there's 5 from over at Western Target, they're the best rural ones. But I don't, hold on.
What Bruce is saying is something that could be done. Correct.
yeah, it's just
Because there's 10,200 divided by 5, 2,048 in each.
Yeah, well,
What?
it might
You
be
could do that.
might be two councillors in one area or something like that. Might be 2 for the sort of northern.
Rural 1, rural
Northern,
2,
yeah.
rural 3, rural 4, rural 5.
Yeah, well, that might be sort of modified lines to a peak area. That might be a combined Catlin's area, sort of central area there and the eastern area there.
What does it achieve?
Well, it's getting,
Going back to what your traditional,
it is,
People vote for people in that area.
there's a lot of history of people's
and
areas,
I mean, West Otago is still keeping their community of
They've
interest.
got identity.
Yeah, so why not at least split
Ben?
it up a wee bit more?
Good idea.
I could look into it.
Being for us to vote today, conceptually, and you're going to come back with 5 different, we're going to subdivide up into 5. I can see that so that it's even, that each councillor is assigned an area rather than 2 for that and I'm not sure over there. But can we do that?
Yeah, so just thinking, if you accepted that what you're creating will not one-to-one align to the existing wards and the existing communities of interest, right? Because Ben will be doing the mix of the mesh blocks and other bits and pieces. So you're creating a new thing that you'll be measuring it against. But if you understand what you're trying to achieve, which is dividing that rural block into smaller groupings that people could identify with, right? That loosely align with existing wards in terms of that sense. If you understood that that would be the outcome, and that was the outcome you were anticipating, realizing that it's for consultation only, so that you wouldn't be debating necessarily, like and argue about this mesh block or that mesh block, because it's trying to generate what you're suggesting is the principle. If you are able to agree that that's what you would like to see, then we could generate that and produce the best our view of the best option around that side for the document. It won't be perfect because it won't be in front of you and that's what it is today. But again, you're creating something that isn't there, right? We're not moving a mesh block from Bruce to Kaitangata. That's two known entities. We're effectively creating something new from something that wasn't there. If you understand that, therefore, I'm not going to worry too much about what that demonstrates, but it applies that general principle of the division, so it's a better connection. If you were able to vote on that and say we're generally comfortable with that, I think we could do it and put that in for that consultation decision on the 26th.
Yep.
And I'm warming to it for the fact that we have 5 areas. You're my councillor. I come from, you're mine, it's not, everyone's got a councillor, everyone's got a voice to be had from their area. We go down to 9, which can I just ask, what would that mean for recompense?
Remuneration, it would be the same pool but divided.
Yeah, but what was the pool?
43,000.
So 43,000?
8 would be 43,750. But there's 40,000.
Okay. That's now starting to come up where I could see that we're giving an opportunity to wider cross-section of society to participate. John,
Just a question for Ben. Ben, why did you put West Otago out on its own? Where it's minus 7.68 and the whole rural ward sitting at minus 2.42.
West Otago was so overrepresented in the feedback from the preliminary consultation. I think half of all submitters were from the West Otago ward. I just thought for argument's sake, we reflect that by keeping that ward in.
So that's the only reason you put it out separate was that feedback.
Because they got people to vote.
Yeah, but were they voting for the right reasons was the next question
Yes.
I'm asking. But
That wasn't a,
yeah, but they're on the verge. They're only like 5% away from going breaking the rules again. So
Just take a few off the rural.
then in the rural,
Just take off White Heath, it used to be in, when you put that back in the rural, where people sleep.
That
That's on
boundary
page
is
27.
different to the current West Otago ward boundary.
right?
That
So,
faint red line is the current boundary. That blue line is where you'd have to put it, because if you keep it where it is.
It's on the bottom of page 27, Jock.
Got a long way to go to get rid of these.
Ali?
I'm just, it's a question for Steve on the financial implications because basically you're changing your whole almost system. Well, you are.
Rating.
you are.
You are.
Not the rating system.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the communities of interest which you have set already are still there. 20 areas of interest, right? They still sit there. They don't change until you change them, right? So, and you can certainly set up in the future to re-look at things if you wish to. But there is a difference between representation and your rating areas of interest.
It's just when it was all rural, I could kind of cope with that. But when you're now going to break it into pockets of your rural, I just wonder how that's.
It doesn't matter. You're going to have to deal with the Bruce Ward area of interest and Milton being Milton urban. No matter what you do, you can't attach that one to one. You're going to have to address the Bruce Ward area of interest because they're currently paying at that level, right? So that's a classic example, and same as Belclue to an extent, classic example of the populations that are currently paying and why you can't connect them necessarily and won't be able to in this instance to the rating, the representation, right?
And if you think of the mechanisms we have, your AGC doesn't change, capital value doesn't change, 50-50 community of interest with the community of interest is still there. So nothing's changing.
Well, a little bit. But
Well,
that's-
your
I
community
think
board
it
will
would-
change.
I think it will change.
So just to
Not the community of interest.
Just to move things along again,
Yep.
if we want to do that, just to be clear, if you were doing another straw poll, Your Worship,
I'm about it.
what we'd be arguing would be option 7 as presented, but that the rural wards identified would be looked to be divided by 5 as the option. That's what we would.
Because of West Otago comes.
Yes, but West Otago is already divided, and West Otago had to be in the way that was presented currently because it was over or under represented at the time. So those mesh blocks did need to potentially change if we were going to do that. So that would be what we'd be suggesting.
Okay, so go back to option 7, have a look at it. In about 30 seconds, we're going to have a vote. So there's a straw poll.
Except your rural ward isn't going to be called your rural ward, is it? It's going to be called something else.
Yes, and
It's
we would.
broken down into 5 wards.
Yep.
Yes.
North, south, east, west, and central or something. So
I think the direction was we would try to link it to, we would try to link it to existing communities of interest and how they're named.
Bruce.
Can I suggest then perhaps that we give the Ben and Steve, I presume you'll be involved with this as well, Steve, some flexibility perhaps to look at, you might decide 9 councillors isn't going to be quite right when you come back. 10 councillors, 11 or something like that. And also perhaps one some of the areas it mightn't necessarily divide up by five. You might say one area is sort of intensive enough that it could take two councillors to represent that population rather than having a boundary between the two people, but we'll leave that up to.
Well, no, I mean, the problem is, I mean, I could take a certain amount of flexibility as we're trying to work some things. The problem is, and we could communicate some of that back to you, but we've got to be careful that if we can become too complex and we open the door to too much. So if I did the suggestion of saying, I might combine it to two councillors in a bigger area, that's the sort of thing that would generate potentially a lot of different debate, right? As opposed to, hey, it may not be 100% right, but it's according to the principles that was described. We've put it out there, and we can get some feedback from you that in general idea that's what you intended, so we would try to show that and send it out to you beforehand. Make sure you generally understood what that was, but not too much.
I'm going to put it to a vote because I think we all know what we're voting on. Everyone comfortable? Simon, are you in on this?
Are we voting on what Bruce has suggested?
No, we're voting on option 7 with lines on the map for the 5 rurals. 6 rurals.
5 rural wards plus.
And West Otago.
And those 5 rural wards are going to be broken up.
As in, there'll be lines on the map so that you can distinctly see which there's a councillor for that area. So everyone knows what we're voting for? Everyone in favour, please raise your hands.
Well, it's much stronger. Much stronger.
Your hand up.
Where are you, Si?
I like the original one, but I'll support it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Have you got a majority?
Yeah, we've finally done it. Can everyone that put their hands up, can you just remember that you did put your hand up if you're going to turn around and vote no the next time? I know we can, but it's going to cause considerable confusion if you do.
Yeah.
Can we have a, no, we don't know.
You can't vote now. You can't say if we vote now, we have to vote. No, that's what you just said.
No, what I was going to say though, John, is for God's sake, remember which way you voted today.
No, yeah, as worship meant, when it comes to the adoption of it for consultation on the 26th, please remember what you put your hand up for when we did it, so we don't have a failure on the 26th. That's not your final decision. That's the adoption for the proposal going out, John.
Everybody has the majority of the table. That's what you've already done it.
Yeah, we've already got 8, but then you've only got to get one, and it's all gone.
So look, I'll go away and put pen to paper on that. I just wanted to thank everyone for your
Good luck.
attention. It's a complex matter. It can be confusing, and I appreciate everyone.
Confusing as if we're confused.
Good luck and thank you.
Are we? Is there anything else? I think we're finished.
Well, we would also, my understanding is from, I tend to be in that, you need to say the community board question. Just if you could just indicate that you would like to keep community boards the same.
Yes.
That was my understanding.
Yes.
Do I need to get straw polls on
Go to
this?
lunch now, Em. Bye.
Yes, you can go out.
Just got to check
Sorry,
whether, if we can go back to the workshop paper, there's some recommendations, or what does it say? Proposed workshop outcome.
Yeah, so sorry, when we talk community boards, Councillor Vollweiler wasn't in, he arrived late, but you had already debated community boards. And so I'm just letting Councillor Vollweiler know that whilst they hadn't a straw poll, the general consensus was that we weren't going to be suggesting an additional community board from within the numbers that we're here.
Well, we never asked.
Right? But it was part of the workshop.
Yeah.
And we had to
So
discuss it.
straw polling, status quo, community boards, all those in favour, please raise your hand.
Hang on, Simon.
You heard it.
Have
You heard it, Simon, didn't you?
Hang on.
Now, we're doing a vote. Guys have got their hands up. Simon, did you hear that?
Yeah, I support it.
Right.
Community board.
So support, are those against?
But
Hold on, those against. There's no hang on in the middle of a vote.
no, hang on.
No, that's
I'd like to say
debate.
I'd like to say one thing. Is I've been asking you before, I didn't have an opinion of Bruce Ward. Right? We've all discussed about having a community board. Maybe the Bruce Ward does need it. we had one representative out of 4 councillors from the Bruce ward here. Bruce Falwell is invited to represent the Bruce ward. I'd actually like to hear what Bruce has to say before we do vote.
He doesn't want community.
No community board.
Why?
Sweet.
Would it change?
No, no,
What's
for
the reason?
No
Milton,
community
he's
board for Milton.
For Milton, he's
We've
saying.
got,
No, he voted against community boards just then. He voted
Yeah.
against status quo, which means getting rid of 2.
Yeah.
So that's why he just voted.
Yeah,
He wasn't here this morning.
you're in favour of
He voted against it.
But you assumed,
Yeah, but we still had the vote carried with the status.
It was only for Milton, Simon.
No, the
No,
vote.
it wasn't.
Hold on a minute, everyone sit back down, we'll repeat the vote, but for goodness sake, guys, if I say, are we ready to vote, are we going to vote, let's vote, and people got their hands in there and already shown their position, and then someone goes, hold on a minute. That's not right to cut into the middle of a vote. So once again, is everyone prepared for doing this vote? No questions in the middle, because that is unfair that you show your hand and then people intervene.
keeping 2 community boards as they are.
Status quo, 2 community boards as they are. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
I've been beaten
It's not beaten down. And those against, guys, there's been a couple of times in recent times where I'm making it quite clear that we're about to go to the vote. People show their hands and then there's interjection. That's not good for democracy. If people are, I'm going to vote and, I'm going to
We
lose,
shouldn't be
I'll
voting in
interject.
a workshop anyway.
No, but it's a straw poll. We had to give direction.
Yeah, so but your point is semantics.
Yeah, it's going to cause troubles at that critical point where we're making a decision. People ask another question.
That's what you were saying.